This is the President of the United States. Who is this? Is it you again?
Look behind you.
This is my private line. How did you get through?
They're everywhere. All the time. We see them every day. But you have to look behind you.
There is nothing behind me. How did you get this number?
The spaceman told me.
What spaceman?
It doesn't matter. They're telling you about monsters. Please, you must look behind you.
Young lady, there are no monsters in the Oval Office.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wayne Shaving.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wayne Shaving.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said, hear that? Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up.
Wayne Shaving. Wayne Shaving. Grant Wayne Shaving.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Tonight I got some good news, and I got some bad news. Usually people want to hear the good news first. The good news is everyone who has seen a chemtrail or has investigated a chemtrail or believes that chemtrails exist are being vindicated as we speak. The bad news is the vindication means that someone's admitting to the fact that they're spraying our skies. And that, of course, are a lot of technocrats at colleges, also publications that have been submitted recently, and the discovery of what is called a well-documented geoengineering plan. So for years, the media bias and internet bias has shunned those who have pointed to the skies, indicating that lingering condensation trails have been affecting the weather. Now, beginning in the 1980s, the mainstream media began questioning the effects of the lingering trails on climate. The story was first filed by NBC News and reported by anchors John Chancellor and science editor Roger O'Neill. Would have fallen into obscurity if it weren't for sharp individuals that preserved this report on YouTube. Here's John Chancellor once again reporting about the jet contrails in the 1980s.
On clear days, you can often see long white lines being traced high in the sky. They are contrails of jet aircraft, actually long, slender clouds. Weathermen are finding them especially fascinating because a theory is being developed that those long white lines may be changing our weather for the better. Details from Roger O'Neill.
The exhaust from jet engines, usually seen as long, thin trails of white clouds behind high-flying jet airplanes, may be a big reason why there are 30 fewer days of sunshine a year in the Midwest now than there were in 1900. The daily range between high and low temperatures has also narrowed. Weather researchers studying cloud cover in 10 Midwestern states found a sharp increase in cloudiness with the increase in commercial jet travel. Particularly in the main east-west jet corridor, there were even more clouds. A jet produces a contrail, or cloud, because its exhaust consists primarily of water vapor.
In the absence of natural clouds, given the correct atmospheric conditions, jet aircraft in high frequency can almost completely cover the atmosphere, visible atmosphere, with clouds.
Simonin says unlike most changes in the atmosphere caused by man, this one is beneficial. Clouds help farmers in the Midwest by blocking the sun. Temperature extremes can damage plants and speed up the evaporation of soil moisture. In the winter, city people benefit because clouds act as a blanket, preventing warm air from escaping into the atmosphere.
No one is trying to make clouds now using jet engines, but this study suggests that jet travel is inadvertently making our days more cloudy. And someday, weather researchers may be able to use jets on purpose to change our weather. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Champaign, Illinois.
Someday they will use the planes to manipulate our weather. That was from the 1980s. In the 1990s, the term chemtrail was used as a catch-all for both normal condensation trails and trails that contain chemicals and heavy metals. There is a well-documented biological component to continuously ongoing atmospheric studies in which nations and regions are figuratively inoculated via specially designed delivery systems with combinations of viruses, bacteria, fungi, mycoplasma, blood cells, biological markers. All these things are being put into the trails so that our technocratic masters can assess human, animal, and plant response. The chemtrail experiment is quite literally an iatrogenic effect that was intentionally being used by the bio-warlords under the direction of the CIA. The multi-organizational megalith perpetrating these biochemical projects against humanity includes the U.S. Department of Defense, DARPA, its research arm, plus the Department of Energy with its huge network of national labs and universities. Private defense contractors and pharmaceutical companies are heavily involved. Cooperating governments of other nations and probably some United Nations agencies are also complicit, since the aerosol projects are global in scope. Chemtrailing is the public's term for a classified ongoing artificial modification of Earth's climate systems. And what they use is they use reflective nanomaterials, they use aerosol trails. All those things are being used to reflect the sunlight. The aerosols are dispersed via jet aircraft, of course, and they expand. We watch them expand always when we see them. And they expand into reflective artificial clouds. Now, this, what I'm telling you now, has been something that I have been reporting now since 1998, I believe. And every time I've reported this, I've gotten deeper and deeper into it to demonstrate just who is involved, what is involved, how it's done, and why. I wrote a book. It's about geoengineering and chemtrails. It's on Amazon.com. It's a really good book. It's selling really well. It'd be a great idea to give to someone for Christmas if they have any questions about the chemtrail situation, because I wanted to tell you that, now we live in times where more information has been gathered. My book has a lot of information in it on Amazon. All you gotta do is just type in Clyde Lewis, the geoengineering book, and you can get it for Christmas. Better get it soon because Christmas is coming and it may not have arrived unless you have Prime. But I've gathered a lot of information in that book, and there's plenty of information about the threat of geoengineering that is ongoing. And I wanted to tell you that tonight we will lay to rest the word chemtrail forever. We have to. It's going to be tough to break the habit of saying chemtrail, but the term chemtrail or chemtrails is no longer a scientific term. Never was. It was a term that we used to describe what was going on in the sky. But now if you use the word chemtrail in describing what you're seeing, it will be used to discredit you. And it'll be used to discredit the validity of an anti-geoengineering effort that is, underway now. It is important to stress that the term chemtrail is not helpful to the cause of exposing and halting climate engineering. It's recommended that we excuse ourselves from using the term, and thus it should be avoided. Tonight we put an end to the word chemtrail. This will probably be the last you'll hear me talk about chemtrail. And the reason why, there's a lot of reasons why, but I'll get to it. The question is, if I can't call them a chemtrail, or if you can't call them chemtrails, then what are they supposed to be called? Well, the answer has been revealed today. The answer is that we should call them what the government is now calling them officially, what scientists at Yale and MIT are calling them officially, what technocrats are calling them officially, and that is stratospheric aerosol injections or stratospheric sulfate injections. They go by SAI or SSI. SAI or SSI. Stratospheric aerosol injections or stratospheric sulfate injections. Those are the official terms now. So we can do away. 2018, we are going to erase chemtrails from the lexicon, from the vernacular. We're going to get rid of it. Because according to Life Science, scientists are considering conducting dramatic interventions in the atmosphere to cool the planet, and they are going to use trails that they're calling stratospheric aerosol injections or stratospheric sulfate injections. New research suggests that the project of atmospheric cooling would not only be doable, but also cheap enough that a single determined country can pull it off. And that single determined country may be the United States. We know that France and China are two areas of interest where they're pulling this off. But the catch, according to the technocrats, is that the trailing of the planet with sulfate injections wouldn't reverse climate change, but that warming would significantly, measurably slow down if we use the trails. If we use these stratospheric aerial injections, these sulfate injections. Some scientists firmly contend that rising temperatures and the onslaught of drastic weather events, as well as the destruction of the overall ecosystem resulting from both, make advanced geoengineering to manipulate the planet's atmosphere and reduce the solar impact a paramount priority. They call it a paramount priority. Last month, there was a paper that was published in the journal Environmental Research Letters by a pair of researchers from Harvard and Yale. And it's the deepest, most current study yet of atmospheric injections, stratospheric aerosol injections. They're also calling it solar dimming and solar engineering. So there are many ways to refer to the trails now. We don't have to call them chemtrails, because you call them chemtrails, immediately, the red flags will go up. If you type in chemtrails in Google, you find out it's all a hoax. They tell you it's a hoax. It's not a hoax, guys. They're just legitimizing it now, and they're calling it something else. So, if you want to take notes, write down the words solar dimming, solar engineering, and then underneath it, write stratospheric aerosol injection or stratospheric sulfate injection. Stratospheric aerosol trails, stratospheric aerosol injection trails for solar dimming and solar engineering. Those are the official words for what you're seeing in the skies now, provided by the Environmental Research Letters, a journal that was produced by Harvard and Yale Universities. I'm not kidding. So now you can show your friends and tell all your friends about what you've learned tonight on Ground Zero. That you no longer call them chemtrails in 2018. In 2019, be ready to call them stratospheric aerosol injections. Because now the plan is underway. And we'll tell you why it's an endgame strategy and why you should be aware and fight it. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101, KXL.
This is Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. At the end of 2018, we should make a commitment to ourselves to use the correct term for what the trails are in the sky. Correct term for the trails in the sky. Because the government now and many colleges and groups that are into geoengineering, ready to just destroy the planet with an endgame strategy, have made moves now to legitimize the experimental aerosol spraying program that's been underway, that we've seen in the skies, and is cooling the planet. It's been carried out by private industries under contract with the United States government for some time. I named names. I cited my sources. You can find them in my book. It's available on Amazon. You can get it for Christmas. It's a great Christmas present to keep you informed on the changes that are going on. According to Life Science, which most people consider to be a very credible website to discuss science issues. According to Life Science, scientists are considering conducting dramatic interventions in the atmosphere to cool the planet. They are working on a project of atmospheric cooling. They say it's doable. They say it's cheap enough that a single country can pull it off. They say that it's so cheap that even we can do it. However, the catch is that trailing the planet with sulfate injections would reverse climate change, but the warming would not go away. It doesn't make sense as to why they do it then. It's just a Band-Aid. The stratospheric aerosol injection is what we call them now, the SAIs. Stratospheric aerosol injections from the trails. Also, we can call it solar dimming if we wish, or solar engineering. Or if you really want to be cynical, call it terraforming. But we certainly don't want to offend the government. We don't want to offend MIT. We don't want to offend Harvard or Yale. We don't want to call them chemtrails anymore, because if you type in chemtrails into Google, you get this. It's a hoax. You guys are crazy. You're all tinfoil hatters. So we call it what the government calls it. We call it what these scientists and technocrats call it, stratospheric aerosol injection. Forgive me if I repeat stratospheric aerosol injection many times on this program, because I think that we should do our duty as gullible American citizens to basically kowtow to the technocrats and say, no more will we call them chemtrails. Because those are conspiracy theorists that call them chemtrails. We're sticking with you. They're called stratospheric aerosol injections. And that means you're putting sulfates into the atmosphere. Actually, no, they're putting sulfates into the stratosphere so they'll hang around for 18 months. So it will dim the Earth. Stratospheric aerosol injections, solar dimming, solar engineering. It's the official term that has the blessing of scientists, where boats, balloons, and planes can spray chemicals into the atmosphere to reflect the sun's heat back into space, mimicking the global cooling effects that you see with large volcanic eruptions. So this paper that was released, I was looking over it today. The paper says that the new spraying program devoted to global cooling alone would cost $3.5 billion to create new technology for spraying and distributing the sulfate trails. The majority of the funds would go into building planes able to carry bigger tanks, big tanks of aerosol spray into the atmosphere, into the stratosphere rather, about double the cruising altitude of a Boeing 747. The paper proposes 4,000 flights a year, which will cost us another whopping $2.25 billion to maintain the program over the next 15 years. The paper also makes it very clear as to what the project entails. This is from the paper. Spray planes will dump sulfur dioxide, SO2, into the atmosphere, and it will reflect light back into space. SO2 is cheap, and there's a lot of it available. Most of the cost of the project would come from lofting the SO2 high enough that it would stick around. Wake Smith, who's a co-author of the paper, stated this: if you deploy material at 35,000 feet, say where your 737 flies, it rains back down in a few days because it's just being acted on by gravity. The new project would eliminate the spreading process that we see with typical SAIs. Listen to this. They're admitting typical SAIs exist. Think about this. I'm going to read this sentence again. This is right from their paper. If you deploy material at 35,000 feet, say where your 737 flies, it rains back down in a few days because it's just being acted upon by gravity. The new project would eliminate the spreading process that we see with typical SAIs, meaning that there have been SAIs that have spread that many, quote, conspiracy theorists have said they've seen, and they've called them contrails or chemtrails. Continues on to say, if you lay a trail high enough, according to Wake Smith, then it stays aloft for a year or 18 months. And then, after he says the typical SAI spread, he condemns the chemtrail conspiracy theories by stating that anything sprayed at the heights in which these jetliners fly would disappear within half a week and therefore has no effect on the weather. So now they spread out and they can disappear within half a week. They want 18 months in the stratosphere while we get about a week or so right here in our own atmosphere. They came right out and condemned themselves by saying that we see typical SAI spread out. This won't. This will be up higher. So they're already saying that the program's underway. They're just going to improve upon it with more money. So there you go, guys. You should feel good about the fact that for the longest time you've been saying that chemtrails exist, but now they've given them a new name. And I think we should just use that new name, the stratospheric aerosol injections, just so they know that we know that we're onto them. We'll be back. Hey guys, it's Clyde, and I'm excited to tell you about Youngevity, a supplement company that I've been associated with since 2016. After 1 year, I lost 140 pounds and felt so much more energetic. Since 1997, Youngevity has had one objective: to enhance the lives of people through lively health and wealth. Dr. Joel Wallach and Youngevity have pioneered the mineral supplement market, spreading the 90 for life message throughout the world. Over the years, continued development and innovation has established Youngevity as one of the most successful companies in the health supplement market. If you'd like to feel healthier, look better, you can go to our special website, www.groundzeroforlife.com. That's www.groundzeroforlife.com, or talk to one of our health specialists by calling 877-877-4202. That's 877-877-4202.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
TV radiation LSD experiments on Americans to attract the attention of a younger audience. CIA Director James Woolsey said he expects the experiments to feature endorsements from TV and rock stars. The U.S. military expects the younger audience to fully comply. Fully comply. Fully comply. Fully comply. Fully comply.
Well, what do you think the program is, Eddie? What do you think the program is?
The director of the CIA is talking about it on YouTube. Look under John O'Brennan.
I've seen
John
it.
O'Brennan.
They talk about strategies. They talk about strategies.
Aerosol injections. It's going to cost $10 billion a year, and there's going to be some countries opposed to it because it's going to mess up the weather.
Are you telling me about atmospheric manipulation?
I'm talking about stratospheric aerosol SAI.
I've never heard of that.
It's super important when you can break it down to 3 letters.
Back in 1977, the United States Army actually unclassified hundreds of pages of documents where it was admitted that they did biological weapons testing. One test involved scientists disguised as ordinary passengers who sprayed bacteria in the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport.
You know, the unexplained natural disasters we're experiencing, they're not natural. We're being attacked every day in America and all around this planet. Even though most people have seen the evidence of it happening, they still don't understand the evil and what it means to their existence.
Psychoactive drugs are drugs that can alter our consciousness.
Stratospheric sulfates aerosols create global dimming effect. It's made them a possible candidate for solar radiation management climate engineering projects to limit the effect of the impact of climate change due to rising levels of greenhouse gases.
They can alter our perceptions, influence our moods, calm us down, make us feel more alert, etc.
Delivery of precursor sulfide gases such as sulfuric acid, hydrogen sulfide, and sulfur dioxide by aircraft and balloons has been proposed.
And we classify psychoactive drugs based on the actions and effects that they have on our bodies. And when we do this, we wind up with 4 main groups: depressants,
aerosols,
stimulants, hallucinogens, and opiates.
You realize what's being sprayed on you?
Psychoactive
aerosols.
Psychoactive drugs are
Psychoactive drugs. Psychoactive drugs. Psychoactive drugs.
psychoactive drugs.
Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. Psychoactive substances in your trails? What do you expect from high-functioning sociopaths? Or what do you call psychopaths? What do you expect? They publish this in a science mag. They give you details on how it's done. Like it says here, as I read earlier, if you deploy material at 35,000 feet, this is according to Wake Smith, who's the co-author of the paper that basically says that this program is well underway. But they're going to improve upon the program by making a stratospheric aerosol injection. He says, if you deploy material at 35,000 feet, basically where your 737 flies, he says it rains down in a few days because it's just being acted upon by gravity. Now, our new project that we're proposing would eliminate the spreading processes that we see with typical SAIs. So, typical SAIs, stratospheric aerial injections, or chemtrails. Remember, we're not going to use chemtrails after this year's out. SAIs, typical SAI spread, he says, If you lay a trail high enough, according to Wake Smith, then it stays aloft for a year or 18 months. So that's their plan. They want to put it up high enough so it doesn't dissipate, so it doesn't spread, so it does dim the planet. Smith then says, in the document, he says that the chemtrail conspiracy theories basically are hoaxes because anything sprayed at the heights in which jetliners fly would disappear within half a week and therefore has no effect on the weather. The fact that these scientists even address chemtrails makes this project even more suspicious. This is literally what the mad environmental scientists are now proposing. The very same people who have for years claimed that chemtrails are a conspiracy theory and don't exist. Now, all of a sudden, they want to chemtrail the entire planet in order to save us from global warming. Oh my gosh, save us from our peril. I mean, the very idea of chemtrails has until now been mocked by the media and the science establishment, who have for years claimed that the very idea of chemtrails is a lunatic conspiracy theory. And this, more than just a preponderance of documented evidence about government-sanctioned chemtrails, this is an endgame strategy is what it is. It's an endgame strategy that will backfire and cause a major climate collapse. I know this. It's happening now. I mean, the endgame project now, global dimming, this scheme, this whole dangerous geoengineering plot to spray billions of tons of smog in the atmosphere so the pollution levels would block the sunlight. Haven't they told us they didn't want pollution in the air? Now they're saying we want to put pollution in the air. Sulfur, sulfates. I mean, what? If sulfur was to mix with the rain, what would we have? I don't know. Did anybody go to chemistry? Sulfurous acid? Wouldn't that be acid rain? Wouldn't that work? It'd kill us all, kill the plants, kill the crops. I remember when acid rain was a problem a long time ago. We were warned that acid rain would bring about a new ice age. That was 1977 they told us this? Acid rain, ice age, flash freezes. Now, imagine them telling us that we could avoid an ice age if we changed our habits and became ecologically minded, environmentally minded. But then they change their mind halfway through the pitch and say, oh, it's global warming. Then when the world was not warming enough for them, they called it climate change, because no one's going to argue about climate change. No one's going to argue with anybody. Yes, the climate changes. We know the climate changes. It does it all the time. It's like a pendulum. It goes back and forth and back and forth. But you know what we don't believe in? We don't believe in the political aspirations of those who want to utilize this climate change as a way to create a boogeyman to tax the hell out of people. That's why you have riots in France. That's why you're having riots in Europe. And you can say it's all about the immigration. It has nothing to do with the immigration right now. They're already set with the immigration problems in Europe. They're already preparing for the Muslim takeover. They know it's happening. So get off your Muslim idea and start realizing it's taxing the hell out of people because they think they can change the weather. And yeah, maybe they can by basically poisoning the atmosphere and poisoning us in the process. Triple 8-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Let's go to Jonathan in Colorado. Hi, Jonathan. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Go ahead.
So really, I just had, first of all, thank you for saying what you're saying. It's total malarkey. But what would somebody do if they actually had a solution?
Solution for what?
They pushed for the global warming.
I have a solution. It's called complexity. You know what complexity is?
Yes.
Yeah. The earth takes care of itself. And if we're parasites, it'll cough us up. We don't need to play with the weather. We don't need to play with any of it. We just need to ride it out like any other civilization is rode out anything. And if we can't handle it, and if we're too fragile for it, then guess what? Darwin is waiting in the room, waiting to take a number.
Very true.
I mean, what are we doing? I mean, we're going to play God because we're going to save everybody? We're not going to save anybody. You know what? The planet's still going to be here. Civilizations are going to go. They're going to come and go. We're already putting together an endgame strategy with this SAI stuff going on. It's not going to work. It's going to backfire. And immediately people are going to go, what happened? Oh, it's climate change. We're at fault. No, these guys are at fault. They always have been. They've carried out this program for some time now. Now they want to legitimize it, and they want more money to go into it, so they go completely higher than they've ever gone before and dump more into the atmosphere.
Right. So what else is there that we can do?
Wait it out like most people do, like most civilizations do? I mean, I'm not saying that we should take a dump in our backyard. I'm not saying that we should just waste the planet for morbid. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what we should do is, continue to be minded about the environment, continue to do things that improve, continue to do things that would basically eliminate the waste that we have. But to sit there and use this weather thing as a boogeyman and then produce an endgame strategy, I mean, I don't know if anybody's seen The Matrix, but that's how they killed everybody in The Matrix. They basically took and laid down trails and they set fire to the sky and it was over. Done.
Yep.
We were dead. Machines ruled after that. So you know what makes me wonder? Jonathan, you know what that makes me wonder? Makes me wonder if they're trying to actually dehumanize the planet. That actually, this is it. The secret's out that, yes, we are heading towards a machine-run planet. Half machine, half man planet. That's why Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. That's why Stephen Hawking said, be ready. That's why I did a show with Jesse Ventura about Ozark bunkers in Virginia and Ozarks, about the Arctic seeds. That's why they're getting all the DNA gathered up. Because they're preparing the planet. They're preparing to dehumanize the planet. There's no doubt. I mean, either we ride it out like most human species do, like animals do, or we think that we can play God with the atmosphere. And that's something we should not do. I'm totally against that because, you know, you do one thing to an ecosystem, it's going to damage the ecosystem for a good long time. Then the Earth has to do drastic measures to make up for the butterfly effect you caused somewhere else.
Very true. I.e. the natural disasters, things of that nature.
I mean, have you ever read what is it? Chaos Theory by Glick. Read that and read about how the weather's a fractal. Read about how it can't be predicted. Read about how you cannot quantify it. You can try to control it, but if you control it and you do something to harm the delicate nature of the ecosystem, it can backfire and kill you.
Right. Do you think there's a simpler, more economical solution that would give us a push in the proper direction?
No. There is no proper direction. It's all a lie. It's a lie. It's a doomsday play. It's a way to milk you for your money. It's a way to create a state socialist government that would be worldwide. It is a farce. It is a hoax. Do not believe it, because now they're saying they're going to dim the planet. Come on. And then they say, well, we can dim the planet, but it's really not going to stop global warming. Shut up. Then why are you going to do it then? What's the purpose for doing it then? Don't do it. But they're going to do it anyway. Why? Because they're getting the funding. So they can improve upon what they've already done, the crap they've already caused.
Fair enough.
Appreciate it. Thanks for calling. Let's go to TJ in Rhode Island. Hi, TJ. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde. I just want to call and ask you a question because you have all the information and resources that I don't have available to me. Have you cross-referenced the utility of this act with anything else that has come about that you've researched so far? Because, as I told Ron, and you may have touched on it during this call, which I couldn't hear when I was talking to him, this is the obvious. This is like the Pretty Girl in the Magician's Act. What possibly might be wanting to get done by someone, but this is what you have to do before you can do what you really want to do? In what way does this provide the utility for the unseen thing that you may want to do? Have you done any research in that?
Well, I don't understand what you mean. I mean, I know that they had Operation Popeye.
I want to do X, but I need to get all this crap in the air first.
Yeah, I want to depopulate the planet, so I got to do this first. I want to dehumanize the planet because we're about ready to allow the machines to do things for us, and we can't have enough people and have machines and have resources available. We want to create scarcity on the planet. That way we can control the food, the water, and the air and we can put controls on it. And those people who don't comply with our wishes, they'll just die.
But is there a particular experiment that wants to get conducted, but this is required first? Does this in any way facilitate some unknown action that
it's another gain of function exercise. It is. I mean, we release this into the air, sulfates in the air, people inhale them, they're a pollutant, they reduce carbon dioxide, they kill plant life, they create a drought.
That's the obvious, though. That's the obvious. What I'm saying is that while that may or may not be taking place, what we really want to do is put it in the atmosphere, because I want to do this unseen, hidden thing over here, but I need this in place.
Like fly in the aliens that we can't see them?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, is there anything, because you have all the things that, like HAARP.
I'm trying to come up with all this. I mean, HAARP has been used in tandem with the metals in the sky, with the grids they create.
Well, all right, that's one example of it, but maybe there's something even deeper and maybe darker than that.
Well, believe me, if I find out, I'll tell you.
Okay, just want to put it out there so you have something to do over the weekend.
Damn you. Better stop it. We'll be back. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700.
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Mainstream News has filed a report about what we're talking about tonight. This is CBS News. I just got from Twitter. CBS News reports a fleet of 100 planes making 4,000 worldwide missions per year could help save the world from climate change. No, it wouldn't, because climate changes. God, the mainstream media sucks. They just suck. Okay, so it says 4,000 worldwide missions per year could help the world from climate change. No, the climate changes. Oh, my God. See how it's just a hoax. It's a big farce, guys. Can you hear this? It's such a lie. Okay. Also, it may be relatively cheap. That's the conclusion of a new peer-reviewed study in Environmental Research Letters. It's the stuff of science fiction. Notice how they want to lower the blow. Planes spraying tiny sulfate particulates into the lower stratosphere around 60,000 feet up. The idea is to help shield the Earth from just enough sunlight to help keep the temperatures low. Goes on. The researchers examined how practical and costly a hypothetical solar geoengineering project would be beginning 15 years from now. 15 years from now? Really? Right. Okay. The aim would be to half the temperature increase caused by a heat-trapping greenhouse gases. I think they wrote this wrong, because didn't they tell us that within 30 years we'd all be dead if we didn't do anything about climate change? So they're saying 15 years. Oh, they're saying that. Okay, I get it now. So they would start now, and in 15 years, we'd start seeing changes. 15 years it would take to change the atmosphere with their new plan. Okay. This method would mimic what large volcanoes do. In total, talking about Pinatubo's eruption, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Although controversial, some think that trying to mimic the impacts of a volcano eruption is a viable way to control global warming. This proposed type of climate geoengineering is called stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI. Theoretically, if done at scale and sustained, the impact can be large. The 1 degree temperature drop which accompanied Mount Pinatubo's eruption is equal to about half of the human-caused warming Earth that is experienced since the Industrial Revolution began. My God, this is just insane. Dr. Gernot Wagner from Harvard University is an author of the paper. He said their study shows this type of geoengineering would, quote, be technically possible strictly from an engineering perspective. It would also be remarkably inexpensive at an average of $2 to $2.5 billion per year over the next 15 years. But to reach that point, the study said, an entirely new aircraft needs to be developed, partly because missions would need to be conducted at nearly double the cruising altitude of commercial airplanes. Wake Smith, of course, the guy who co-authored it, says, no existing aircraft has the combination of altitude and payload capabilities required. In fact, the team is investigating an aircraft that they want to call the SAI Lofter or the Sail. And they say its fuselage would have to have a stubby design, and the wing area as well as thrust would need to be twice as large. In total, the team estimates that the development cost for the airframe would be $2 billion to $350 million to modify existing planes that could go higher if they wanted to. First, they would start with 8 planes, then 100 within 15 years. In year one, there would be 4,000 missions, increasing to just over 60,000 per year by year 15. Can you believe this? Oh, my gosh. Of course, it comes with a lot of controversy, it says here, like treating a fever with an aspirin. Oh, my gosh. Anyway, so officially, they're already getting the ball rolling here. So, hey, all you guys that saw the chemtrails and reported it, thank you so much for all your hard work and getting the word out. Thank you for attending all the meetings. Thank you for buying my book. Thank you for what you do. You've been vindicated. These guys are a bunch of mad scientist morons, and they're going to destroy the planet far worse than it's already been destroyed with the chemtrails they've laid down. And remember, we don't call them chemtrails anymore. They're SAIs. Back with more Ground Zero. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
False security has lulled the madness of this world into a slumber. Wake up. An eye is upon you, staring straight down and keenly through, seeing all that you are and everything that you can never be. Yes, an eye is upon you, an eye ready to blink. So face forward, with arms wide open and mind reeling. Your future has arrived. Are you ready to go?
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up.
Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. As a student of history, I've learned that what you can count on is a group of elitists or technocrats or what have you, always trying to groom people. They groom people with ideas. They scare them with boogeymen. They traumatize them. And what they do is they provide a solution after they do that, meaning we're going to inflict that pain on you. And after we inflict that pain on you, we're going to give you the solution on how that pain can go away. Or we can take it away. Even, it just depends on whether or not you want to cooperate with us. They control how we react to things. And then they bring in leaders that can assist them and continue the progress of their plan. And if they don't participate, then they end up getting killed off or suicided or what have you. And that brings about more trauma-based problems for the people because leaders that they love, leaders that they, that they've grown to love, they get killed. They get taken out. I have a lot of worries about how we're not allowing ourselves to talk about other issues besides the political issues of the day. And I know when I'm not talking about ghosts or I'm not talking about demons and I'm not talking about the paranormal, people think that when I'm taking on topics such as what I'm talking about tonight, they say things like, well, get off the political topic. This isn't a political topic. This is about survival. All right. This is about survival and what we do in order to survive and how we can inform ourselves about how the oligarchy or the oligopoly is basically taking over, and with their goal of imperialism and this idea of a monopolization of your time, your political insight, look, when the manipulation is being applied now, and they've done so with a cover-up of the chemtrails for the longest period of time. Many years ago, during the biggest hype of the global warming fears, there were scientists who were saying that the planet was facing something akin to an extinction-level environmental catastrophe. And they said back in 1977 that it was going to happen 30 years, maybe 20 years tops, right? They said, we're going to cool down. The planet's going to cool down. Be ready for a new ice age. It may happen. Flash freeze. They were talking about this. And people were going, well, what do we do? Nothing. We can't do it. Then someone came along and said, well, no, it's not going to be a cooling period. It's going to be a heating period. We see the temperatures rising, but there was no evidence to show the temperatures are rising. Yet they did such a great job in signing up on the science that people fell for it. And so this entire process of a scientific scare gave way to all sorts of movements towards pressuring people into believing that anthropogenic global warming was indeed a reality and that there needed to be some very drastic measures that needed to be carried out in order to avoid major environmental catastrophe. And it was argued that perhaps the planet was beyond repairing itself and that it was mankind's responsibility to go ahead and do some surgical operation. And that surgical operation, or giving the aspirin to the feverish child, was called geoengineering. Now, geoengineering has been called many other things: climate engineering, climate remediation, climate intervention, and in some circles, they call it planetary chemotherapy. And while there are skeptics out there that argue there is no way science has the power to control the weather, science has said that they have the power in extreme conditions to alter the atmosphere. It will do it if necessary in order to save us from extinction. But I do not concur. I don't think that saving the planet from extinction is something that we are capable of doing. We will become extinct if God so chooses to have us be extinct. And using chemicals and sulfates and those sorts of things in the atmosphere, in the stratosphere, is not going to be the answer to anyone's problem. What I'm getting at is that last hour, I was talking about how the media bias and the internet bias has shunned those who have talked about chemtrails, talked about lingering contrails or chemtrails. Back in the 1980s, mainstream media was talking about it. We played a clip from NBC News. In the 1990s, they were aware of it, saying all these people were speculating what it could be, why they were doing it, and what the purpose was. And then by the 21st century, it was well known who was behind it and what was going on. I wrote a book about it. It was about the geoengineered apocalypse. Available now on Amazon. Pick it up for Christmas. Get it delivered by Christmas. And in my book, I said that there was a well-documented biological component to continuously ongoing atmospheric studies in which nations and regions inoculated the atmosphere by a specially designed delivery system. And they had within these trails, or whatever they were, viruses, bacteria, mycoplasma, blood cells, biological markers, all kinds of things to use for gain-of-function exercises and iatrogenic artifacts on the people in mass. And this was under the direction of the CIA. Now, there were other groups and parts that I named in the last hour. I'll name them again just so there is no question as to what I'm saying and that I'm telling the truth. These biochemical projects, spraying, what they were, and the people involved, or the groups involved, were the U.S. Department of Defense, its research arm DARPA, plus the Department of Energy, and then, of course, a lot of other rogue labs, universities, privately funded airports, private defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies. They too are involved. DNA gathering, that's involved. All these things cooperating to create something that it's just amazing that we're not paying attention. It looks as if, and I don't want to sound like some doom whack job, but it looks as if they want to dehumanize the planet. And they're making way for whatever Kurzweil talks about, the singularity and the artificial intelligence and all that. And it all comes down to the chemtrailing. The chemtrailing is a public term for the ongoing artificial modification of the Earth's climate, where they're laying down reflective material in the trails in aerosol form to reflect sunlight. And these aerosols are dispersed via jet aircraft trails, and they expand into reflective artificial clouds. Now, I wanted to say that 2018, this is the last month of 2018. And as it being the last month in 2018, I think now we should make a commitment to ourselves and to others to use the correct term for chemtrails. Because if you use the term chemtrail anymore, you're going to be laughed at. You're going to be laughed at. You're going to be made fun of. In fact, if you type chemtrail into Google, it'll tell you you're crazy. But I think in 2018, make a commitment in 2019 to rid ourselves of the word chemtrail in our vernacular, in our lexicon. We need to remove it. Because the government is now making moves to legitimize the experimental aerosol spraying program and also improve upon it. And it's been underway. It's been carried out by private industries under contract from the United States government. According to Life Science, and also a report in CBS News just now, scientists are considering conducting dramatic interventions in the atmosphere to cool the planet. According to the article, new research suggests that a project of atmospheric cooling would not only be doable, but also cheap enough that a single determined country could pull it off. But the catch-all is the technocrats say that even if we trailed the planet, it would not completely take out the global warming scenario. It would cool the planet, but global warming would still exist. It would just measurably slow it down. So they're giving it an official word, official title as to what's going on here. And that's why I'm saying we need to get rid of the term chemtrail. Because now they're calling them stratospheric aerosol injections. Stratospheric aerosol injections is what they're calling them, or SAIs. So I think we got to get into the habit of calling them SAIs. That I looked up in the sky and we saw SAIs as far as the sky could be. Because you say chemtrail, and you say, oh, you're one of those chemtrail people. You're nuts. Well, okay, the official term is SAI by our government. And I say, how do you know that? Well, I listened to Clyde Lewis and I bought his new book and he talks about that stuff. Now, Life Science. Back to Life Science, back to CBS News. There are technocrats that are basically saying that trailing the planet with sulfate injections would be the idea to try to beat the problem we have of climate change. Last month, there was a paper that was prepared in the journal Environmental Research Letters. A number of researchers at Harvard and Yale had prepared this paper for the Environmental Research Letters. It is the deepest, most current study yet of stratospheric aerosol injections. And they're also calling it solar dimming. They're calling it solar engineering. Those are the official terms that we should use because they have the blessing of the scientists now, the technocrats. They're going to be setting up boats, balloons. They're setting up boats to, fog up the harbors, balloons and planes so they can spray chemicals into the atmosphere. They're also looking for billions of dollars to modify planes to go even higher than regular jet aircraft. And they have a reason for this, and I'll tell you why coming up. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
Back to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Chemtrails. The word chemtrail is no longer in service. Please make a note of it. Stratospheric aerosol injections. They're calling them stratospheric aerosol injections. Solar dimming projects, solar engineering projects that are being proposed now. The official term, again, is stratospheric aerosol injections. And it has the blessing of scientists where they're going to be putting trails in the stratosphere. There's a new paper out that, if you read it, it says that the new spraying program devoted to global cooling alone would cost $3.5 billion to create new technologies for spraying and distributing the sulfate trails. People say, well, why is this happening? Well, it's because they kind of have hinted that they've had SAIs for some time now, but the more effective SAIs will be the ones that are being laid at 60,000 feet rather than 35,000 feet. So they want to put funds towards putting in planes that will carry big tanks of aerosol spray, and they'll be able to have a cruising altitude of about 60,000 feet. The paper's proposing 4,000 flights a year, which is another whopping $2.25 billion to maintain the program over the next 15 years. This is what the project entails. Spray planes will dump sulfur dioxide, SO2, in the atmosphere, and it will reflect light back to space. SO2 is cheap, and there's lots of it available. Most of the cost of the project would come from lofting the SO2 high enough that it would stick around. Wake Smith, who's one of the guys that wrote the paper, co-authored the paper, he says if you deploy material at 35,000 feet, say where your 737 flies, it rains back down in a few days because it's just being acted upon by gravity. The new project would eliminate the spreading process that we see with typical SAIs. If you caught that, he said that there are typical SAIs that do spread, meaning they have been doing these stratospheric aerosol injections, but they haven't been effective in the places they're doing them, so they want to go higher. If you lay a trail high enough, according to what Wake Smith says, it'll stay aloft for 18 months rather than having it dissipate within a week. Of course, Smith actually condemns chemtrail conspiracy theorists, saying that he says that jetliners fly at certain altitudes where these chemtrails disappear within half a week, and therefore they don't have an effect on the weather. I think it's weird that they're even addressing chemtrails and saying that they were SAIs prior, but they weren't that effective. So yes, they've confirmed that SAIs or chemtrails exist, but we need to call them SAIs now so people will know that we're not crazy and that we're not chemtrail nutters and that we know what's going on. Because the very idea of chemtrails has until now been mocked by the media and the science establishment. And they've claimed the very idea of chemtrails is just some crazy, quack, lunatic conspiracy theory. And this is more than just a preponderance of the documented evidence here, reading from these papers and knowing that the name, well, it's an endgame project. This is endgame is what this is. What it is, last resort endgame. It's like planetary chemotherapy is what they're trying to pull right here. It's called global dimming, and it's a dangerous geoengineering plot to spray billions of tons of smog into the atmosphere so the pollution levels would block sunlight and halt global warming. And the problem I have here is that everything nature does, it's just a sum of chemistry, biology, and physics. I mean, it's completely amoral, right? Nature doesn't care about you. Nature doesn't care about religion or politics. They don't care about climate summits. Nature doesn't care about that. Nature doesn't care whether or not you're a global warming denier or whether or not you're a cultist who believes in climate change, global warming, whatever they feed you. I mean, you can't negotiate with nature, and you can't spin it, and you can't evade its rules. So if they tamper with the climate and accidentally lower the temperatures worldwide, we could see flash freeze we can see a flash freeze phenomenon that's similar to what befell the woolly mammoths. I mean, it's not enough that we all have to fit in as a species and be mindful of the ecosystem. We all know and can concede that when a species doesn't learn to fit within nature, it gets kicked out, off the planet, off the island. And this is what is going on. Playing God, this is definitely playing God. This is something that can affect the entire planet on a grand scale. And all they need is the money and the go-ahead, and they're ready to go with their little plan. Their little plan of spraying sulfates into the atmosphere. Sulfates are pollutants. They do affect the body. They will affect the crops. They will affect the animals. It will affect everybody. And they figure, well, it's just a small price to pay to get the climate back to normal. The climate is fine. And if you can't ride it out, then you're going to die. If you can't adapt to the weather, you're going to die. And I don't know of anybody, that I haven't known for the 54 years I've been living and breathing on this planet that haven't adapted to any climate or any weather that's come at them. whether it be snow, rain, hail, tornado, hurricane, or what have you. The earth is a violent place. It always has been. But to take and wreck an ecosystem, collapse an ecosystem because we want to play God with the weather. We want to, I mean, you know, this is man-made manipulated weather. And this is getting the blessing, right? The blessing from the technocrats, because it just seems to be that their purpose here is to dehuman the planet, or to change the planet and get rid of the humans. Make it livable for some other life form, whatever it might be. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment. The Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Something's wrong up there. There's nothing they can do about it. This stuff that's being sprayed overhead with its desiccant effect, smothering plants, metal infiltrating the human body, all these various diseases that nobody can prove. There's nothing they can do about it.
Geoengineering is the biggest elephant in the room. It's the most cataclysmic undertaking of the human race yet, superseding all other assaults on the environment.
It was easier to control 1 million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people.
Someday, in the next few years, a solution will emerge that people will look into that cauldron and decide that they have to learn their limits.
This geoengineering idea in its simplest form is basically the following. You could put fine particles, say sulfuric acid particles, sulfates, into the upper atmosphere, the stratosphere, where they'd reflect away sunlight and cool the planet.
May there be mercy on man and machine for their sins. May there be mercy on man and machine for their sins.
There's nothing they can do about it. There's nothing they can do about it. There's nothing they can do about it.
The leaders of men conceived of their most desperate strategy yet. A final solution. The destruction of the sky.
Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. Something is in the air, and it's going to be laid down soon. They're called SAIs, stratospheric aerosol injections. That is what they're calling them now. I say that we should make a commitment in 2019 to call them what the technocrats are calling them, so you can avoid sounding like a conspiracy theorist. Because now the blessing has been laid down. People can do this now. It's going to be interesting to see how this all turns out. If we're alive to see how it turns out. Let's go to Joe in Pennsylvania. Hi, Joe. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde.
Hi.
Okay, put on your thinking cap. Do you remember it would have been this past late spring or early summer? You had a gentleman on your show from NOAA. I forget his name. He was like the head of NOAA. And with regards to him, he talked about, do you remember the conference that was going to be held in France concerning global warming? Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's the Paris Accords, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. He and his team, he said on your show that they did a study for the conference, and their study concluded that there was no global warming.
Right.
And his findings were just swept right under the rug.
That's right.
Now, why is that? Who's in charge here?
Well, it's the world body. It's the Summit 2030. It's the UN. It's a number of groups that have been proposing these changes, creating a green economy where, you know, we haven't felt the bite of it yet because I don't think anyone has actually come in and say, okay, we're going to tax you for using fuels. We're going to tax you for using all these things. But they're doing it in France now. They're doing it all over Europe because, you know, President Macron wanted to be like China and being a trailblazer in you know, basically preventing global warming and better environment. And the people of France liked that idea, but then they didn't realize how much it would cost them to do this. And so now they're rebelling. Now they're rallying. Now they're setting things on fire and they're angry. I mean,
I understand
and
that.
So now,
and that's what that gentleman said that you had on that was from NOAA. He said it's all about the money.
Yeah, it is about the money. And this whole idea of lowering the temperature using sulfates. I mean, this is another nonsense. Somebody's got to stop these guys and tell them, hey guys, you know what? The data is wrong. I mean, if they fund this, they could easily damage the ecosystem. They could damage it if they continue to do this program. If they do this program,
yes, absolutely.
I mean, worse than they've already done it with the trails they've already laid down, with the trails they acknowledged and said, well, those SAIs are really not effective because they dissipate a lot quicker than the ones that we're going to be using.
Okay, so the bottom line is, the guy is with NOAA. That's very credible. So why were his findings swept under the table? That's just not fair.
They're inconvenient. They're inconvenient. That's why. Doesn't fit their agenda. And that's why every time I read what they have to say, every time, if people were just to really read and listen to what they have to say, they would realize that this whole global warming, this whole politically charged climate change endeavor that they have is a joke. It is not real. It is a boogeyman to actually implement sustainability charges and laws, and they want to create scarcity so they have a reason to tax the hell out of you, to keep food from you, and keep pain pills from you, to keep everything from you unless you give them what they want.
Right. And Clyde, some years ago, I saw this on, I'm not sure if it was National Geographic or whatever show it was, but they said if there was ever a nuclear holocaust with all of the radioactivity and what it would do to the planet, the Earth eventually would go back to the way it was.
Yes.
Because the Earth has a process, and it will always go back to the way that it was.
It's an amazing planet. If we just give it the opportunity, it's an amazing planet.
Yes, and enjoy it.
Yeah. Joe, thank you for your call.
Clyde, thank you for taking my call.
You bet. Have a good night. Take care. Yeah, it's an amazing planet. You know, it is always, I mean, and I pointed out, you know, here where I live, back in the 1980s, there was a huge mountain that exploded here, some 50 miles north of where I'm broadcasting. Mount St. Helens exploded. It devastated the entire area, making it look like a nuclear bomb had hit. Today, the air was crisp. I looked across the horizon and saw that mountain, and it is building itself up again. It took that long. It took those many years to build the mountain back up again. It took those many years to have a serene and beautiful landscape there again with trees and flourishing and birds and animals. But it rebuilt itself. It rebuilt itself after a volcano erupted and destroyed the entire area. It rebuilt itself because the planet is a complex system. And we're nothing to that. We're small compared to what the earth can do to us. And so if we're going to do something to the earth, we better be prepared to reap the whirlwind. Let's go to Brett in Michigan. Hi, Brett. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde.
Hey, man.
Your previous caller there, Joe in Pittsburgh, he tweaked my memory. But before I get to that, Clifford Carnicom out of California.
Yeah.
I remember a dozen years ago when I first got onto this, he and Rosalind Peterson, California Skywatch, were holding conferences. And it was at that point that they realized that the vernacular had to become consistent with the academic vernacular. So they came up with stratospheric aerosol injections. They came up with solar radiation management. I forgot what other words were appropriate and necessary, but there is the Georgia Guidestones. And I remember good old Ted the Terrible Turner on NPR, probably 4 years ago, told a guy who queried him regarding that and global depopulation. And Turner said, all that's really necessary for he and his clique is around 250 million slaves. He actually said slaves. All right. And then you got Ezekiel Manuel from either Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania. Heard this on KDKA a couple years ago. Senior broadcaster there. He kept repeating this in his broadcast over and over. Ezekiel Manuel declaring everyone should just plan to sign off, from the earth at age 75, because at that age, one is nothing more than a useless eater, according to Ezekiel Manuel. All right, so then you got, as you know, Henry the Boar Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, David Keith from, I guess, Harvard.
Yes, David Keith is one of the guys who are pushing this issue of the solar dimming, the injections of the sulfates. He's another one of the guys in the think tank.
Not only that, but I saw a guy, you interviewed some really cool fellows from Ireland.
Yeah.
About a month ago, right? And there's a guy over there in Ireland, Wexford County. It's called ClimateChangeAgenda.com, his website.
Yeah.
He actually collected samples, and it's on YouTube. He's collecting samples of what he was describing as some sort of an atmospheric or stratospheric cobweb material from the fields. And then, like a month later, after it went to Cliff Carnicom, apparently Carnicom is doing all sorts of advanced testing on these materials. Okay, so it came back positive for some very advanced high-tech polymer material that can stand all these, egregiously aggressive atmospheric conditions.
Sure.
So, last but not least, I remember Michio Kaku in a presentation. I hope you'll see it sometime. It's called Ethereal. And phonetically A-T-H-E real. Right? That's how I remember it. Ethereal, the battle for heaven and earth. And in that presentation, Kaku and about 5 of his colleagues from big-time institutions, they all cited the Kabbalah as the source of all their advanced scientific precepts. And then recently I heard a guy, C.J. Bergerkin, CJBJERKNES out of Chicago. He's on YouTube, and he's an honorable Hebrew American historian. He says this is called Premonitions of the Holocaust and the Armenian Holocaust. And what he revealed, Clyde, is that in the context of the Torah, I think it was the Leviticus, there is this principle, tenet, that once the world is put into absolute chaos, where everything, monetary, the environment, everything is in chaos,
yes,
then and only then will the Hebrew Messiah return. And Bergerkin said, yeah, guess what, folks? There's a book called Holy Serpent of the Jews by Tex Mars, and it explains all this from the preeminent Talmudic rabbis throughout the world.
Well, they're already talking about the chaos, the building of the third temple. In fact, they were lighting menorah for Yom Kippur. For Hanukkah, they were actually stating that it's time that things start changing and things start being built. And because there we are. I mean, they say that we're in the end times. And, if you're hypnotizing the eschaton by basically screwing with the weather, mixing things together, and as you said, you talked about the Georgia Guidestones. I mean, 500 million people in order to keep a balance with nature? That means a lot of us are going bye-bye. And they can make it look like it was an accident by just doing these trails, these SAIs, and screwing with the environment. When we all know the Earth can take care of itself. We've seen it happen before. We'll see it happen again. I mean, look, if the Earth is totally destroyed beyond all recognition with all kinds of powerful things, then Hiroshima and Nagasaki would not be on the planet today. It takes time to rebuild a destroyed planet. And the planet can do it on its own. It doesn't need our help. I mean, we can contribute to keeping the planet whole, doing our part. But if we're that far off, there's no way of looking back that we must certainly ride out the storm. And those who don't make it, don't make it. Those who do make it, do. All part of, survival of the fittest. We're not all going to live. There's a thinning out period, I'm sure. Look at the book of Ecclesiastes. It talks about that. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
You're listening to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Go to Brian in Tennessee. Hi, Brian. You're on Ground Zero. How you doing, man?
Oh, it's a fun day off.
Well, good. I'm glad you're having a day off and relaxing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what does sulfites do to the mucous membrane?
Well, it's a pollutant. What do you think it does to the mucous membranes?
I really couldn't tell you.
Well, I'm just saying, it's a pollutant. It does damage to the body. It does damage to the respiratory system. I'm sure it irritates the mucous membranes. It's a horrible thing. Yeah. I mean, people get sick. You lay a lot of trails down, people get sick.
And that's kind of what I'm wondering. It's like everything I could do to blow my nose anymore. I think it'd be easier just to shove gravel up there and blow it out.
It may clean it out a lot better if you did that. It's like you have to inhale sand in order to sneeze and get something out of your system. But no, it's true. I mean, there are people that they've complained before that after heavy trail sprays and you're looking up in the sky and you see that the sky is white, it's not blue. You're inhaling that stuff, and that stuff is there. And this is a small program compared to the program they're proposing to go 60,000 feet in the air and drop off this type of sulfate. And it'll be there for 18 months.
Right.
So they have to do it. They have to do it like every day, and then for 18 months they're building a barrier that it dissipates. They have to rebuild it again.
Well, I noticed I'm seeing advertisements for nasal cleanings or nasal washouts and whatnot.
Neti pots are awesome. Don't knock a neti pot, man. Those things are great.
I'm not knocking them.
No, I'm just saying they're amazing. Huh?
You're actually seeing it get advertised on television and on the internet.
Right. They're advertised. They advertise them because, well, they're advertising it because people, people are getting these very bad, reactions, and they get stuffy noses. They get coughs all the time. They're just, have you ever felt like that you just can't seem to shake a cough? I mean, it's happened to me. I had a cough coming on. It was a bad cough coming on in October. A few days ago, I got something else, and I'm trying to fight it now. I don't sound as bad with this, but tell you what, it's been hard to breathe. I went to my doctor. He says, well, everybody's getting this because it's just that there's something in the air that's creating this type of problem with people in their upper respiratory system. And I think, I know what that is. I know what's going on. I know what's happening. Stuff's in the air. You got to breathe it in. But lately, we've been getting a lot of wind here and no moisture, no rain, so no real reason to drop the trails. But when they start dropping them, I can promise you, we'll start seeing a lot of rain and we'll seeing a lot of wind and maybe even some snow. So be looking in the skies and notice the skies, how they certainly change after you see a lot of trail laying, or what we call the SAIs now. Remember, 2018 is the last year that you can use the word chemtrail. 2019, I urge you to call them SAIs because that seems to be what they've decided to call them in government circles and in science circles. That way they can separate themselves from them horrible, horrible conspiracy theorists. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
Hey, on the phone with me is Ronnie at GetTheT.com. Ronnie, I got to tell you, I'm getting emails. People are writing me and they're saying they're using the tea, and I'll tell you, they're very happy with the results. Can you tell people why it's so good?
Well, it gets rid of all the bad stuff and leaves all the good stuff, and, takes out all the stuff that shouldn't be in your body. And usually the byproduct is people lose a little bit of weight, and people actually feel better with lots more energy. So it's cool.
Get to Tea. And also a new product called Minerals Plus. What do we have to, what is that all about?
Minerals Plus is cool because a lot of times we're deficient in some things. There's 72 trace minerals that are inside that product, as well as potassium, magnesium, and coral calcium. So it's kind of a bumper. You take one or two of those a day, and that'll bump your energy too because you have fuel to run on. So I'm very excited. It's been selling really well.
Minerals Plus and Get the Tea at GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Ronnie, thanks for the call. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks, Clyde.
Join me on a journey where getting lost is the only true destination. Where the past, present, and future all coexist on the same timeline. Where happiness is an illusion. This is the future we are in right now. Where our phones are the first things that we touch when we wake up, the last thing we touch before falling asleep. Radiant, seductive screens we so lovingly, endlessly gaze upon. Much like you're doing right now. Well, welcome to a future where our true reflection is only revealed once the screen goes dark. Welcome to the darkness. I hope you find it enlightening.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Tonight we lay to rest the chemtrail word. We no longer call them chemtrails. because they're not calling them chemtrails anymore. They kind of, they basically let the cat out of the bag by talking about their new program they're proposing for stratospheric aerosol injections or stratospheric sulfate injections, SAIs or SSAs or whatever they want to call them. It's about dimming the planet or dimming the sky in order to lower the temperature on the planet. And this is a bad idea because it's geoengineering, and it's certainly something that, it just seems a little crazy. They're asking for billions of dollars to start this plan, which they say is going to be different than talking about the other SAIs that have been seen in the past, which they kind of hinted at the fact that they have been doing this before, just that now they want to go, instead of at 40,000 feet, they want to go at about 60,000 feet. And they say they'll need new planes and new spraying apparatuses in order to do it. And it's to combat climate change. But you can't combat climate change. Climate changes all the time. So no, they're not going to combat climate change. They're just basically going to screw with the nature. They're screw with nature, screw with the ecosystem. And this is where I come in and I say again, this is a hoax. This is a farce. This is some false flag operation for something else. Before science fiction author Michael Crichton died, he was ostracized for a speech that he gave on the subject of complexity theory and environmental management. Michael Crichton, of course, is the guy that wrote Westworld. He wrote Jurassic Park. He was a science fiction writer. And so he got a lot of heat by environmental groups for failing to incorporate complexity theory in their doom-mongering projections of the effects of climate change. So what Crichton did is he chastised those who inflated projected cataclysms from global warming and encouraged them to factor in the possibility that a complex system such as the ecosystem can and will be resilient. I believe it's resilient as well. I've seen it in action with what's going on in the area of Mount St. Helens. Crichton said that the psychological impact of fearing any predicted cataclysmic event can be far worse than the event itself. What got Crichton into trouble was his assessment of global warming fear-mongering, and he stated, authoritatively telling somebody they're going to die can itself be fatal. Here's an excerpt from that speech that he gave where he got into a lot of hot water.
But who believes that the climate can be stabilized when it's never been stable in the entire Earth's history? We can only have such an idea about stabilization if we don't understand what a complex system really is. And if we don't, we're like the blonde who returned the scarf because it was too tight. I'm sorry, my wife is blonde and my daughter's blonde. I have to stand up for them. A lawyer gets on an airplane and finds himself seated next to this incredibly beautiful blonde. And he wants to engage her in conversation. She's about to take a nap. So he says, I'll tell you what, we'll play a game and I'll ask you a question, and if you can guess the answer, I pay you $5, and if you can't guess it, you pay me $5. She shakes her head and turns over to go to sleep. He says, okay, if I ask you a question you don't know, you pay me $5, but if you ask me a question and I don't know, I'll pay you $500. She wakes up. She turns around. So his first question is, what is the capital of Arkansas? The blonde thinks for a minute, hands him $5. He says, okay, now you go. She says, what goes up the hill on 3 legs and comes down on 4 legs? He goes, he racks his brain. He flips open his laptop. He gets on Google. He checks. He looks. He's stymied. He can't do it. He gives her $500. And then he says, well, what's the answer? She gives him $5. My sisters are lawyers, and one of them is here tonight, but I can't. It's too difficult a problem to resuscitate lawyers. Fortunately, we can learn to manage complex systems. There are people who have studied it, and they know how to do it, but it takes humility. And I would add, along with humility, that managing complex systems also takes something else that's very, very important, which is the ability to admit we're wrong and to change course. If you manage a complex system frequently, you are frequently, if not always, wrong. You have to backtrack. You have to acknowledge error. You've probably learned that with your children, or if you don't have children, with your bosses. And one final thing, we have to not be afraid. Fear may generate a television audience. It may generate cash for an advocacy group. But fear paralyzes us. It freezes us. And we need to put that behind us as we move into a new era of managing complexity. Because look, this is from The Independent in England. Is this the end of the world? Earthquakes, hurricanes, floods. What is happening to our planet? Is this the end of the world? No. We live on an incredibly active planet. Earthquakes are continuous, 1.5 million a year, 3 every minute. This is all the earthquakes that occurred in the state of California and Nevada in the last 7 days. We have a Richter 5 earthquake every 6 hours, a major earthquake every 3 weeks. We have a quake the size of Pakistan, this is in Japan, every 8 months. We have 11 lightning strikes on the planet every second. We have 1,500 electrical storms on the planet at any moment. A tornado touches down every 6 hours. A tsunami crosses the Pacific every 3 months. We have 90 hurricanes a year, 1 every 4 days. It's constant. Is this the end of the world? No. This is the world.
And that's Michael Crichton. Is it the end of the world? No, it is the world. And that's what climate scientists don't tell you. They don't tell you this is the world. This is how the world is. We are in a complex system that is resilient. It's always been resilient. That is science. That is true science, not the fear-mongering that climate change people give you. Climate changes, and none of this dropping of sulfates in the sky is going to change anything except destroy the ecosystem. It'll destroy the ecosystem. Junk science and doomsayer fear-mongering, they've thrown out the aspects of complexity theory and its effects on the environment. No one even brings up the idea about the resilience of systems and how the Earth is capable of adjusting and healing its own. I mean, this means that with every so-called extinction level event, the Earth seems to renew itself. It seems that every end-of-the-world theory throws out the hope of resilience. Resilience gives hope to the world. The death of the planet will be hastened by doomsayers and mad climate scientists that believe that the answer to the planet's woes are technological tools used for geoengineering. And what is so aggravating is that for years, people have equated chemtrailing with crank conspiracy theory and mental illness as they pollute the skies and dim the sun. I mean, if you point this out, if you point out that they're polluting the skies and dimming the sun, you're a conspiracy theorist. But using the term stratospheric aerosol injection, well, that makes you sound all technocratic and important and sciencey. It would probably garner interest in climate science cultists who will probably give their blessing to this project, even though for years pet projects involving the trailing of the skies for weather control have been going on for 20 years or more. The global cover-up of chemtrails has been going on in order to give scientists time to legitimize their ongoing crimes against the environment. Now it's official, and scientists have molded the program in their image, so you can now say that the trails in the sky are for the betterment of the weather and climate. But see, the reality is different. The reality over time will be far more deadly as trailing the skies will increase and the trails will linger longer than before. Geoengineering is basically stabbing at the planet. Stabbing at the planet and expecting it to continue to take the stabs, but then the planet won't. The planet will rebel, Mother Nature will rebel, and it will kick our ass. No doubt. And then it'll go about its ways of being a complex system. It'll repair itself and it'll be resilient. And then another civilization will rise up from the ashes and will do this whole thing all over again. But in the meantime, scientists have decided that SAIs are the way to go. And this is what we'll call them in 2019. Stratospheric aerosol injections. That is the term. We will put the term chemtrails to bed so that people don't think we're crazy. You're not crazy anymore. You're just thinking. And you have the cojones to look up and see that something is wrong. 888-673-3700. It's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
It's the things that go bump in the night. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Let's go to Nathan in Ohio. Hi, Nathan. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
My first point is, I don't know if you're aware, but I saw some news some news article concerning them putting things out in space to deflect sun and dim the sun from Earth's perspective, also to combat global warming.
Well, all these things are well and good, but if they're going to damage the ecosystem, if they're going to damage our evolution, I mean, this is something that is nature. And they're saying, well, we contributed to the damage of nature. Well, you know what? Nature will eventually swing back. And if we're really doing horrible damage to the planet, we're going to pay for it. And I don't know, there's no money on this earth, not enough money on this green earth to save us from ourselves. And so they're not the ones that are going to save us. We're the ones that have to save ourselves. And if it's really that bad, then either we pay attention and we do things to help our planet, or we just continue to turn it into a hole, and it'll turn around and it'll bite us. It'll take us down. But we don't need to go off and put things into the stratosphere that's going to dim the sun when there's no actual proof, if anything, that the planet's heating up. In fact, they're saying that we're in a cooling period, and it's really bad to say that when we're in the middle of winter. But come on, the winter came early this year. It's been super cold here, even here in Portland. We are unbearably cold already. I know it's December, but the truth is that we usually maintain an average of about 52 degrees, maybe 50 degrees. And we've been like 40, 41 degrees and dropping into the 20s at night with winds sustaining, making it feel like below zero. It's just, this is the kind of cold that we're experiencing in the country right now.
Do you think maybe they're geoengineering the planet to prepare it for some other type of life form? That's
what I'm thinking. That's the only thing that at the moment that I'm looking into, because it's certainly not going to be supporting us. And you look at all the people that gave us the warning. Stephen Hawking, before he died, said we're either going to have to adapt, or we're going to have to leave the planet, or we're going to have to find a way to create artificial intelligence to maintain the planet. Elon Musk is tired of the planet. 70% chance of him going to Mars. He says he wants to go there, and if he dies, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
So he doesn't care that he dies on the way. He says people die on the way climbing Everest, and nobody says anything bad about them. He says, if I'm crazy enough to go to Mars, I will live there if I have to, and I know I'll die there. That's his goal. He wants to live on Mars. I did a show with Jesse Ventura, and we were talking about underground bunkers that the elite have in Virginia and in the Ozarks. So they're all prepared. We've got DNA that they want to gather. They're telling everybody around the world, we need your DNA. They have seed vaults in the Arctic. They have records in a mountain somewhere in Utah. I mean, they're preparing for something, whether it's a new life form or the end of our lives, and they want to do whatever they can and make all the money they can before they can't take it with them. It's crazy.
I think. See, when I was young, when they first started hearing about chemtrails, I really thought maybe they were just trying to prevent us from seeing something in the sky, make it cloudy so we can't see what's going on.
Right.
But I realized over time that no, it had to do with everything that it has to do with, and it has to do with their greater agenda.
Well, now we can officially call them SAIs. I know that John Brennan called them when he was meeting on the Council on Foreign Relations. Now the scientists at Yale and Harvard are calling them SAIs. They've got the plans together to spend the billions of dollars to make these well-fitted planes that'll go higher than 737s. They say that these trails will last more than a week, the last 18 months if they're done right. So what are they doing? They're planning on turning the sky gray. And they're doing it because they think they need to they want to warm the planet or dim the planet or cool the planet. I don't know what they're doing. But, they could create a flash freeze. And if we have a flash freeze, we're dead.
Absolutely. And we know it's happened before.
Yep. We know that civilizations have gone away, too, and we don't know why they've gone away. They just disappear without a trace. Maybe somebody comes up with the idea of coming up with a monster, and we believe the monster so thoroughly, like Crichton said, that we end up killing ourselves. We end up wiping ourselves out. We end up tinkering with things and playing in playgrounds we shouldn't be playing.
Well, just getting people to concentrate their energy on it is going to make something like that happen in the long run.
Right. You ever wonder why we're nearing the apocalypse and Armageddon? Is because it's on people's minds all the time. It may not be expressed every day, but I think in everybody's unconscious and deep in our subconscious and our core, we worry that the world's ending. We worry that something's going to cause the world to end, some war, some asteroid, some economical or ecological collapse. And we've been told now for years it's going to happen. And those who tell us and those who continue to push the issue of climate or push the issue of weather destruction or calamity, they're making money off of it all. Their lectures, their tours, the books they sell, and now they want to tax us? No. I mean, look, let's just let the world take care of itself. We don't need technocrats to tell us that they can save us because they can't.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for calling. Yeah, they can't save us. Why do you think they want to create robots? Why do you think they want to create the singularity? Why do you think they want a marriage made in hell with us and the machines? Because they can't save us. We have to adapt. We have to find ways to have lungs that can take the new atmosphere. We have to find ways to have eyes that can see at night. We got to find ways to genetically design our children so they'll be able to survive the new environment while the planet has to go through its resiliency phase. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
FM News 101 KXL.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. No shopping, no measuring, and no cooking. Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start Diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start Diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Hey, it's Clyde Lewis for Fast Start Diet. You know it works, and it's now your turn to try it. Available on Amazon.com or go to FastStartDiet.com. Use promo code Clyde and get $10 off your first box. You'll also get the #1 rated Lipo3 Appetite Suppressant Spray. It's free. Whatever your weight loss goals, begin with FastStartDiet.com. Use promo code Clyde. That's promo code Clyde.
Unusual looking jet trails in the sky are actually chemical-laden chemtrails. So, is there really poison in the sky?
It's confirmed that during the Cold War, the United States military conducted secret tests on unsuspecting people in the city of St. Louis.
They say the government is dumping chemicals on us to control or manipulate the weather.
In the race for armed superiority, chemical weapons were used on unsuspecting human guinea pigs.
The greatest concentration of this compound was sprayed near the Pruitt-Igoe housing complex just south of downtown St. Louis. It was home to 10,000 low-income people, and an estimated 70% were under the age of 12.
Chemtrail.
So this is in violation of all medical ethics, all international codes, and the military's own policy.
They're not contrails. Are indeed real. They're spraying almost every day. I watched the clouds and watched the spraying program going on.
And next thing you know, everybody in the neighborhood was fighting and arguing. You didn't know why.
It's an
Experts have looked at how the U.S. Army targeted its own people long before the enemy.
And they're responsible for the cloud's creation and weather manipulation program.
Understand that we can affect anything from central nervous system disorders to flu-like to malaise to cancer to headaches. 75 to 90% of all cancers are caused by environmental
Some think we're being poisoned by planes spraying chemicals called chemtrails. But is there any truth to this?
Some very distinct cloud cover moving into the region. That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region, dropping chaff.
They're dark operations. That's why they're not out in the media.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. The number's called tonight, 888-673-3700. 888-673-3700. Putting the word chemtrail to bed for 2018, 2019. The SAI becomes official. Stratospheric aerosol inoculation. Sulfate. Dimming of the earth, dimming of the skies. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Let's go to Matt in Washington. Hi, Matt. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde. Great show. Listen, I'm intrigued by the flash freeze thing. We know it happened because they found mammoths with grass in their mouths, grass in their stomach, and they were done for in seconds. So we know it's possible. Okay, what happens if the globalists or whoever you want to call them are successful in cooling the planet and it starts snowing, but it doesn't stop snowing? What do we do then?
Well, then we decide that once again we have to take a number in Darwin's waiting room. It just seems to me that either way we're stuck taking a number in Darwin's waiting room, and it's because we let these so-called thinkers, these technocrats, tell us that something needs to be done and they have the answer. And the answer is to spend billions of dollars to put an aspirin in the mouth of the planet to get rid of the fever. And the fever is non-existent. It just doesn't exist. I mean, none of the data checks out. I mean, we see fluctuations in climate. Climate does change back and forth, but they're saying that this would prevent climate change. Once again, they don't even know what they're saying. It's not going to prevent climate change because climate changes. What it's going to do is it's going to satisfy these political bureaucrats that want to continually try and cover up the fact that they're messing with the planet. They're the ones messing with the planet. We're not messing. We're just doing what we do. We wake up every day. We do what we do. It's these big megalomaniacal organizations. They have tons of money they can use to ravage the planet. The military-industrial complex. We have the drug-pharmaceutical complex that destroy our water and our resources. The military destroy our water and resources. The Department of Defense destroys water, resources, and food. I mean, look, Kissinger said it was going to happen back in 1974. And he's the only remaining, grandfather of the New World Order that's still around. And he's still, from where he is, he's still pushing these issues. So as long as, this continues and we continue to have people convinced that they're going to save the planet, they're not going to save the planet at all. They're going to kill us all.
Well, maybe we're the next dinosaur, but of our own doing.
Right. And that's how we're going to be. We're going to be the ones who are going to wipe ourselves out because we're too stupid to understand what resilience is and how the planet is resilient.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for calling. Let's go to Jen in Oregon. Hi, Jen. You're on Ground Zero.
Yeah. Hi, Clyde. So I was looking at Wikipedia, and I had some quotes from there. I also to your viewers, maybe look at Wikipedia and sulfur dioxide. And then, so basically, in a nutshell, it's saying that it blocks nerve signals from the pulmonary stretch receptors and stops some scientific name called an inflation reflex. So if your stretch receptors don't work, that means you can't take a breath in.
Right. It means that the muscles and the diaphragm area that are responsible and the The vagus nerve responsible for breathing and sinus rhythm will be thrown for a loop if you inhale sulfur dioxide, or if you inhale anything having to do with the gases produced from sulfurous acid, which is, of course, combined with the rainwater, which will, if you inhale the rainwater or inhale the particulate rainwater, you can easily contract some sort of respiratory illness.
Yeah, for sure. So it goes on, to say actual lung damage, free radicals produced cardiovascular disease, hypertension, atherosclerosis. And then it also talks about, it's a proposed use in climate engineering. And then it says that it will be, the effects will be uncertain, and there will be regional consequences.
Yes.
On rainfall patterns, and especially like in monsoon areas. So I just want to mention that, but I also wanted to, because, there's such a big talk about, what is it? Global warming, is it this? I've been following all this for many, many years. I worked for a doctor that covers all this stuff, so I've had my fingers in it a long time.
Right.
What I think is the SAIs have been going on for so long that they just play with the weather. It's cold here, it's hot there. They're turning California into a desert. Whatever. They're just playing so much that it's anything they want it to be. It's a supercell, it's a superstorm, it's a super tornado, it's a super hurricane. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily, quote, global warming or global cooling. They're just playing with our climate, period.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are things that you can do. Like there was something I read about how there was a guy who convinced an island that if he was to dump iron oxide into the ocean, it would help the environment. And what it is, it created an earthquake. And they say, well, how did that happen? Well, if you have enough of something, you can cause something. If you have enough push, you can push anything out of the way. And so with regards to this, they're going to be spending billions of dollars to modify aircraft that can go 60,000 feet and drop trails of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere and have it linger for 18 months and continue the process with 4,000 flights a day. That's a lot of work to try and get the planet to dim.
I escaped California because of the pollution, So it's really crazy to think that we would actually do that, there's just got to be some lawsuits. There's got to be just, world lawsuits. This is just rather crazy and insane. But I also want to say that this doctor I worked for, Klinghardt, he, says that a lot of the diseases that we have now, of course, and something but he was mentioning earlier, polymers were coming out. A lot of the Morgellons, a lot of the lung problems, people get the flus and it goes right in their lungs. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to do quotes and stuff, but, these certain docs, Lyme disease docs and all that deal with people with these really bad things, are saying that a lot of the stuff is coming from the airs, including, like in the Nazi time, they were dropping stuff down, it's biological warfare. And he absolutely, these docs are actually saying that, including with all these other things, they're playing with us. They're actually experimenting.
Right. Gain of function exercise on a grand scale. They're doing it worldwide, and they think they're doing us a favor when in reality I think they're doing Mother Nature a disservice. And that's an understatement.
There's a sociopathic element into that.
I agree. Well, yeah, high-functioning sociopathic, actually, which makes them psychotic. Thank you, Jen. Thank you for the call. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Take care. Let's go to James in Georgia. Hi, James. You're on Ground Zero.
Clyde,
Yeah.
I can't believe it, man. This is the first time I tried to get you, and I've only been on the line about 5 minutes.
Well, you got thrown into the front of the line for some reason, so go ahead.
Wow. Look, I live in Columbus, Georgia, and these chemtrails are terrible here. We have our big military base, Fort Benning, the infantry base here. I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but the chemtrails are terrible here. And I've noticed them for a number of years. And one day I was at my yard, and I watched 2 planes for over an hour just covering the whole sky with chemtrails. But the main thing I wanted to ask you is I have a lot of nature hobbies, including bird watching, and wildflowers, and collecting rocks and minerals, and so on and so on.
I love bird watching myself, too.
the last few years, the birds that used to be common here are either absent or very rare. About 90% of the birds I used to see commonly, both migrants and permanent residents, have gotten extremely rare. And I just wonder if these chemtrails are hurting the bird life real bad.
Well, something in the climate or something dealing with the weather and its patterns, the jet stream, a number of things that are creating what are known as, what we see as repeat performances. And what I mean by that is if you notice that we had another polar vortex omega block that formed over the eastern U.S. and moved its way through the Midwest into the southern latitudes. This cooled the entire area of the United States and kept it in lock deep freeze now since early November. There hasn't been any...
we're averaging about 15, 16 degrees colder than usual in Columbus.
Yes, that's exactly why. And it's because that we have created, when we've done our little magic with the trails, we have created some very strange weather patterns. It was talked about back in the 1980s. It was advised and seen in the 1990s. It was adopted and actually thought about as a program pushing through to the year 2000. And now here we are being told that they're ready to improve upon what they've already done with the SAIs, and SAIs will be ready to go by next year. So, I mean, this is a program that's been going on that people have been told they're crazy for believing in it and seeing it. But now it's it wants to be improved upon by a number of technocrats and the globalists in order to make some sort of a dent in the warming process. Although now you hear it's either cooling or warming. You don't know which is which. And that's why I say I have no real belief in a politically charged idea that they can change climate or they can change weather unless they really have a good weather machine. And if they do, they're going to screw with the environment to the point where we can't rescue it.
Yes, sir. Well, do you believe it's hurting bird life?
Of course.
I'm telling you,
yes.
About 90% of the birds I used to see commonly, both permanent residents and winter birds and stuff like that.
I think what birds are...
I don't see it all.
Right.
Extremely rarely.
I think the birds are being affected by electromagnetic currents because the magnetite in their brain is what controls their direction, where they go. And when you have this electromagnetic current, electromagnetic energy being sent out by 5G or sent out by anything, it throws them off and it can put them in situations where they can't figure out their migratory routes and they end up dying. A whole bunch of birds have been seen falling out of the sky and dying, and it's not from being poisoned. I mean, people are seeing this. They are documenting this. And to say that people who see this or report this are conspiracy theorists, this is unheard of. This is unprecedented. And I think it's time we should start turning the tables and calling on these climate people, whoever they may be, to start fessing up to the fact that they don't have any clue as to how this is going to be done. They just believe in something they're told exists when it doesn't exist. It's a phantom they're going after, like a rainbow. 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
More with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Let's go to Michael in Arizona. Hi, Michael. You're on Ground Zero.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. I'm 100% in agreement with you that man cannot alter the climate. I don't believe he can. And he certainly would not have the ability or the wisdom to correct anything. I think people missed the boat by denying a creator and creation and that there is a plan for man beyond this earth. But that doesn't mean there's going to be an extinction of man upon it. Now, one thing I want to talk about is, like things like microwaves and radar and stuff. Killing birds is something that sailors have done with radar just because seagulls are the sailors' worst enemy because they paint a lot and they have to cover up and scrape off all their droppings. And so they've, used the radar and wiped out flocks of seagulls, even gotten in trouble for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that, if birds are dropping from the sky, I'm thinking that maybe microwaves have a lot to do with that, as well as, like you said, electromagnetic things.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as chemtrails, I read a long time ago that they also contain a lot of metals.
Yes, they do.
And one of them is boron. And some metals are absorptive and some metals are reflective. And I never got a decent explanation as to why they were using that, except for one time a military person told me that they bounce signals off of these things to intercept.
There are
calls and stuff.
Well, there have been reports that if there are grids being made over a city, they are using some of the metals in the trails to actually bounce signals off of. Yes, and that was something that was brought up back when the HARP project was actually being discussed, and how it's used, and how they can use trail grids in order to send signals and bounce signals off those.
Yeah, and I guess the original thing was for trying to break up the cartels a long time ago, but I'm not sure of that.
Well, they were also looking for oil. They were looking for ways to communicate with submarines and in deeper oceans, and yeah, I mean there are different ways that they use these tools, but sometimes the residual from using these tools they don't want to talk about because once again it does destroy the environment. It destroys the environment, and we have to wait for the.
It can destroy the environment, and that's for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, it's something can destroy the environment, and it can take the ecosystem, and it can change it to where the weather patterns can change. They can take a different route. They can create. I mean, this is why you get droughts in certain areas. This is why you get steady rains in certain areas, because if they're manipulating the weather like that, you're going to be seeing effects. In fact, John Brennan, when he spoke at the Council on Foreign Relations, he talked about these SAIs, and he said the only danger we see from them is effects from other countries and other locales that we don't have any control over.
Well, and that could be. I know that sunspots were also brought up as a reason why we're going through a cooling period now.
Sure.
There's not enough of them.
Well, look, there are a lot of natural reasons why we go through what we go through. The planet is very resilient. It does, hopefully it will change its direction, or it may remain a certain way for a certain number of years. But once again, this is something that when we came to this planet, that most of us, we realize that this is what happens. We know that it snows, we know that it rains, we know that tornadoes touch down, we know that earthquakes and electrical storms happen. And to say they don't and to pretend like we're seeing any increase or decrease due to climate change, I think is disingenuous. Climate changes, it always does. And then they tell us that they can prevent climate change. No, they can't. It changes. The political stuff,
absolutely,
that's a different story. The political stuff is what I'm against because it's doing nothing to help us. It's doing everything to help the bureaucracy.
It's just to rob the people of their wealth, finances, and the possibility of future discovery of things.
Boy, okay, hold the phone there, Michael. You're amazing. Right there. We're almost out of time. I want to leave that thought there and let it dangle. Amazing stuff, Michael. Thank you for calling. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that last comment, that was a good way to end this hour. Remember, listen to groundzero.com, listen to groundzero.com. Go to listen online. We got more phone calls. 888-673-3700. Don't go away. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
Hey, it's Ronnie with us again, and I want to ask him about the 3-letter oil. Now, that's pretty mysterious. There's a lot of letters out there that we can think of. There's TLC, Tender Loving Care. That's PDQ, Pretty Damn Quick. But this is the 3-letter mystery and the oil that brings the 3 letters. What can you tell me about this mystery 3-letter oil?
This 3-letter oil is amazing, and so much is going on in the news with this oil, and this is something that I pride myself in the company because it is GMO-free and it is organic. And there's a lot of companies out there selling the 3-letter oil, but maybe doesn't go through quite the rigmarole that I go through to get the purest and the best. So it's kind of the Ferrari of oils. The benefits, if somebody has anxiety, really will help you. Stress is, and here's a little fact from stress. Stress will take a normal body, somebody with perfect circulatory system, and can give them a heart attack if they're stressed too much. So stress is really important to get rid of. That'll also knot your muscles up.
My wife loves the 3-letter oil. It helps her out. She just had her breast cancer. She's happy, and it helps her a great deal. And I'm happy, too. And I just would wonder, when are we going to be able to be free to give out information about the 3-letter oil?
it might have to be a mystery oil for all times, but one thing that I love about it, it's legal in 49 states. And we've opened up. We're just opening up to Britain as well, so that's kind of exciting. They're kind of understanding the 3-letter oil. So a lot of places are, catching on board whether the government wants to go that way or not.
Well, I love it. It works. And Ronnie, I'm so glad you have it out there for everybody. Where can we pick it up?
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com.
Thank you, man.
Ground Zero. So this is where the first guy got AIDS.
Peter, this is the site of the 9/11 terrorist attacks.
Oh, so Saddam Hussein did this?
No.
The Iraqi army?
No.
Some guys from Iraq?
No.
That one lady who visited Iraq that one time?
No, Peter, Iraq had nothing to do with this. It was a bunch of Saudi Arabians, Lebanese, and Egyptians financed by a Saudi Arabian guy living in Afghanistan and sheltered by Pakistanis.
So you're saying we need to invade Iran?
Spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. I can't seem to get that song out of my head. You know the one? It's an earworm now. Da, 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 it's cold outside. It's gonna be cold. It's cold outside. It's blowing like hell. It's cold outside. It's cold outside. And it's gonna get colder and colder and colder. It's winter, guys. Of course it's gonna be cold, but the planet is cooling down. It's not heating up, it's cooling down. And with all the nonsense we're doing, I wouldn't doubt that we wouldn't go to flash freeze. But I had to let you know that I am going to do my damnedest to put to bed, to lay to rest, the word chemtrail in 2019. Because of the official stand that we're hearing from Yale and Harvard and the government and, the arm of the Department of Defense, DARPA, CIA, all these groups that know that there has been a strategic or stratospheric aerosol injection program that has been going on that they say is not effective enough, and they want to be able to build upon it with billions of dollars being put into the coffers so that they can take planes 60,000 feet into the air and drop a very thick, heavy cloud of sulfur dioxide, which is not good for us. And it's not good for the planet either, but they think it is. They think that geoengineering is the answer. Not that we need to all, work hard to keep the planet nice and tidy and happy. They want to screw with it. They want to geoengineer it. And what gets me is we've had this global cover-up of chemtrails. We're going on in order to give scientists time, I believe, to legitimize their ongoing crimes against the environment. Now, it's official, and scientists have molded the program in their image, so you can now say that the trails in the sky are for the betterment of the weather and the climate, because that's what they're saying. And I'm sure it'll take time for the global warmist cultists, the people who are the Warmans, members of the Warman Church. They're the ones that are certainly going to be wondering what's going on now, because the reality over time will be far more deadly as trailing the skies will increase and the trails will linger longer than before. The reduction in solar radiation caused by geoengineering, combined with the natural cycle of global cooling from sun cycles, as was pointed out earlier, could produce a sharp reduction in food crop production across the globe. And this would result in increased food prices and reduced food supplies, adding to vectors for civil unrest and climate refugees invading first world nations to escape starvation. And this, of course, provides a precedent for implementing scarcity laws and actions that were proposed by Henry Kissinger in 1974. Now, if you remember, I had pointed out that the U.S. National Security Council under Henry Kissinger completed a classified 200-page study called the National Security Study Memorandum 200, Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for U.S. Security and Overseas Interests. Now, I brought this document up on the Alex Jones Show, and Alex remembered that this study, this memorandum, was put together in 1974 in order to propose an act of scarcity in the United States in order to curb population growth. And at first it was aimed at the lesser developed countries. It was a grave threat. They said that the growth of these lesser developed countries was a grave threat to the United Nations, actually not the United Nations, but the United States national security. And so they adopted as official policy in November of 1975 by President Gerald Ford this National Security Study Memorandum, and it outlined a covert plan to reduce population growth in those countries through birth control and also implicitly war and famine. Brent Scowcroft, who had by then replaced Henry Kissinger as National Security Advisor, and in fact that was the same position that was to be held in the Bush administration, he was put in charge of implementing the plan. Now I know that I know that we have already talked in great lengths on Monday about President George H.W. Bush, and he's been buried. He was buried today, but his ghost has now been revived because when Bush Sr. was CIA director, he was ordered to assist Scowcroft with this memorandum. Secretary of State, Treasury, Defense, and Agriculture were also behind it. National Security Study Memorandum 200 similarly concluded that the United States was threatened by population growth and that this measure that they were proposing had to be taken to lessen the population of the United States, or that we would be forced to regulate vital resources like food and water. Now, there were several measures that Kissinger advocated to deal with this alleged threat. Most prominently, birth control and related population reduction programs. He also warned that population growth rates are likely to increase appreciably before they begin to decline, even if these measures were adopted. So even proposing and pushing these measures would not guarantee the right kind of decline in population growth. They had to do something more. So they had to have the second measure. They curtailed food supplies, and they targeted certain states in part to force compliance with birth control policies. And Kissinger basically said, there is also some established precedent for taking account of family planning, performance, and appraisal and assistance requirements by a U.S. agency for international development consultant. He just basically this whole nonsense that population growth is a major detriment of increases in food demand. So we had to do something, some sort of program, some sort of mandatory program that was needed. And Kissinger said, we need to act on these things now. He said that we would be looking into the cauldron and we would have to answer to what the cauldron tells us. He said, would food be considered an instrument of national power? Can it be a tool? Can it be weaponized? Damn right it can. He asked if the United States was prepared to accept food rationing to help people who can't and won't control their population growth. Would you? Of course you wouldn't. But they can give you a plausible deniability answer when it comes to, well, what's causing the droughts? What's causing the rains? What's causing the flooding? Well, we don't know. We have no real idea, but we do have a plan, and that is to inject the skies with sulfur dioxide in order to curb climate and change climate and create scarcity for everyone. Good job, Henry. Yeah, you see, you're next on the list. I'm sure God's looking to kind of tap you on the back and say you're gone. Or maybe some other character from hell. But, this is the thing. Kissinger is pro creating scarcity, and he predicted that if we were to find a way to bring famine back, he said birth control would not be a problem. People wouldn't have kids. And he said it'd be advantageous to create a famine in order to curtail birth and thus reduce the population. So what he was advocating was starving every one of us, starving us into complying with, population control. But, there are other ways that we can get people to comply, and that is force them to comply. It's like I always say, people say, I won't take the chip. I'll never take the chip. Well, they can force you to comply. And one of the one of the additions, or one of the, I think, tools they use for population control and for food control and food planning and scarcity is, of course, the trailing of the skies. That has been effective in creating droughts and harsh winters that begin early and extend into the spring months. And this destroys crops, it creates food shortages, and a lot of times farmers are unable to meet the demands of those who need mouths to feed. Nearly all plants depend on solar radiation for photosynthesis, which uses CO2. It's a fuel. It produces oxygen. It produces O2. That's a byproduct of what plants do with photosynthesis. But if we reduce solar radiation through the SAI pollution, that's going to reduce the production of oxygen by plants, resulting in a global fall in atmospheric oxygen levels. And that's not good for you. It's not good for me. Now, note this, that carefully, that, you need to understand this, that the geoengineering efforts being advocated to dim the sun are based on the use of sulfur dioxide, okay? Trails, smog, lifting the trails, dropping the trails. I mean, even the EPA admits that SO2 interferes with human respiration and makes it difficult to breathe. It also creates acid rain, or rain that contains sulfurous acid. This acid rain will devastate forests, food crops, and result in the acidification of crop soils that destabilizes the soil microbes. And of course, this will lead to crop loss. But pay no mind, we just got to cool the planet down. We got the ways to cool the planet down. It's better than what we've been used to seeing. It's better than seeing a chemtrail spread, or seeing these these new SAIs and how they spread, or how the SAIs that we are going to propose are better than the SAIs we have now. I can't believe they said that. They said, well, if you notice, regular SAIs just they spread and they go away in a week. So, I mean, they got to watch what they say. They just gave away the farm. They already have an SAI program. They just want one they can improve upon. They'll make us have the chemtrail linger for about 18 months. And I'm sure that's what we all want to see, right? A chemtrail that'll last in the sky for about 18 months over a certain area, creating certain problems with the sun. I wish I had the power to say, hey, just stop. I wish people would listen to my show and they would take the time to look up what I talk about, to know that I'm not talking out of my south end. And they would realize that what I'm saying is very important and we need to do something, say something. I'm saying something. You need to say something. Spread the word and talk about it. And call the show tonight. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
This is Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Howard in Washington. Hi, Howard. You're on Ground Zero.
Hello, Clyde.
Hey.
If what we're describing tonight is for real,
it is for real.
Yeah.
Why would it not be?
Well, I just.
You know what? I could be in trouble by the FCC if I was lying to you.
That's true.
Yeah. So it is real.
Well, the point I wanted to make was that if this is what they're doing, they couldn't have picked a worse time to do it.
Well, they're not. Okay. Here's the deal. They aren't in any way, shape, or form ready to do the improvement. In other words, they don't have the technology right now necessary to fly 60,000 feet.
Exactly.
However, they have been doing this at 35 to 40,000 feet. In fact, they kind of acknowledged it when they were talking about the difference between what their plan was other than the other SAI plans that have been going on, where they say, you can see these trails dissolve in about a week's time. Ours will last 18 months.
Yes. The point I was going to try to make was that the solar observatories around the world have been reporting that the sun is at a very unusual period of minimum activity.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And some even fear that we could be going into a Munger minimum. And I believe that went from in the late 1600s, the early 1700s, 50 years. There was no summer, and this kind of activity could only exasperate whatever was, the effects of that would be.
Right.
It's almost as though they're ramping it up right now because of that.
Well, that's the thing is that I don't understand how they configure the climate models to be anything but a cooling trend. And that's always been, the word, as well as I do, in 1977, they were pushing the cooling trend. Yeah. So you look at the time span from 77 till now. I mean, you and I were both, pre-teenagers or teenagers when that was going down? And here we are now in our 50s and 60s, and we're saying, where's the proof to show that we're in a doomsday scenario? Well, there's no proof to show it because we're still here. Nothing's destroying us. We are seeing weird weather, but we're seeing weird weather at a time where they're actually saying that weird weather is happening because of us, when we know that weird weather has always been on the agenda, but not warming weather, but cooling weather. And it is cooling. We're seeing cooler temperatures in the summertime and cooler temperatures in the wintertime. But people point out, well, what about these places like 120, 130 degrees? Yeah, they're always hot, and they're hotter because of where they're positioned on the planet. But in places where we should have temperate zones, it's now becoming a deep freeze.
Yes. There's a bit of synchronicity going on here.
What's that?
Well, this afternoon, or it was just before dusk. The sky has been crystal clear out here all week long.
Yes, it has.
And I looked out the window just before sundown today, and there were two big fat trails going north to south right across the sky. And they were massive, and they were parallel with each other.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought of was this program. And lo and behold, when you did come on the air, this is exactly what you're talking about.
Well, good. It seems like we're in tune with one another. And you know what? Those trails are going to represent some strange weather probably in the next 2 or 3 days.
It is curious how they always seem to do it right ahead of a weather front.
Because they're steering it. Yeah. They have the ability to steer the fronts for the most effectiveness. I mean, I could see if they're steering the storm, they could stall it and we could get at least 2 inches of rain out of the deal, which could happen, or we could get at least 1.5 inches over the weekend, which could happen.
Or snow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, I mean, I wouldn't that be odd if we get snow, right now? I mean, we usually, end up getting the snows sometime either after Christmas or just before, but we could get the snow as early as this weekend if it got cold enough.
When it happens, they never do predict it.
Nope. It's always a shock. But we saw the trails, and this would indicate, and it doesn't take a meteorologist to figure this out. This would indicate that we're going to see some substantial moisture that could turn into freezing rain or snow.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it didn't.
Yeah. Well, Howard, we'll see what happens. We'll see how our storm turns out for the weekend, if we have one.
Okay. Good night now.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Scott Stevens, who's a weatherman out of, he was at Chubbuck, Idaho. I remember he worked with the greatest guy ever, Lloyd Lindsay Young. I was a weather freak when I was a kid. Actually, Mark Eubank, weather guy in Utah, I met and hung out with him for a while. Wanted to be a meteorologist. Ended up meeting Lloyd Lindsay Young, but knowing that Doug Stevens worked with us. Doug Stevens is amazing. He used to plan his weather with the chemtrails, and he got fired for it. Because he was able to predict with accuracy whenever the chemtrails would be laid, he was able to know where the storm would turn, and he'd make his plans against the computers when the chemtrails were laid. And he was accurate. They didn't like that. They said, don't talk about the chemtrails, because they're not real. Well, now we know they are. Now we know that there's been a cover-up, and now we know that the technocrats want to use them, but they want to use them up higher because they just don't think the ones that they are using now are as effective as the ones that can be up higher. How's that? So once again, SAI, the new phrase to indicate a chemtrail. That's right. Stratospheric aerosol injections. We'll be back.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
events are becoming more common and more ferocious.
This is humans deliberately trying to have an effect on the climate. A fundamentally different undertaking from merely messing up the climate, which we've been doing for centuries.
Another example is the array of technologies often referred to collectively as geoengineering. That potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection.
Know that a complex system cannot be controlled, it can only be managed. Because the behavior cannot be predicted, it can only be observed and responded to. The system may resist attempts to change its state. It may show resiliency or fragility.
Toxic air on their lives and life.
Air pollution like that is full of tiny particles that can cause health problems ranging from temporary discomfort to long-term heart and lung diseases.
Thousands of square miles were blanketed day after day. Reading this for several hours in a traffic jam can't be healthy for
A recent study from the World Health Organization found that more than 90% of the world's children are breathing toxic air.
Weathermen are finding it especially fascinating because a theory is being developed that those long white lines may be changing our weather for the better.
As the surface temperature of the Earth continues to rise, so too will the ferocity of natural disasters.
Time to clear the air.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. We are the number one late night show, wall to wall every night, 7 to midnight. Keeping it lit for you, and thank you for your support listening to this program. Hey, I want to remind you that our Krampus party is coming up. That's right, we're going to be doing a Krampus party at the Hawthorne Hideaway. It's going to be an amazing time for everybody. We want you to come out because, of course, it's Krampus. It's fun. It's just amazing. It's going to be we're going to have music and food and all kinds of cool stuff. 2221 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard. 2221 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard. If you love the Halloween party, you're going to love our party with Krampus. Ground Zero Krampus Party. It's going to be the 15th, Saturday, December the 15th, 7 p.m. at the Hawthorne Hideaway. 2221 Southeast Hawthorne. That's 2221 Southeast Hawthorne. Come on out and say hi. Hang out with all the good Ground Zero people. Crew will be there. Books to sign, T-shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. Come on out. Be a part of it. 888-673-3700. 888-673-3700. Let's go to Joe in Oregon. Hi, Joe. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Good to speak with you.
Anyway, I thought I had a topic that nobody had touched on, but one of your last callers mentioned it. But I remember back in, I was born in 65, and I remember in like 1972, 1973, school being let out early because of sunspots.
Really?
Then
wow.
a few years later, there was a big issue about acid rain.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious what your thoughts were in regards to that. Do you think that's possibly when they started with the trails?
No. Acid rain was a product of sulfur dioxide, which was already being put in the air by the pollution that we were creating at the time. They had clean air policies that they were implementing. Of course, many presidents at the time, many leadership in the 70s throughout were proposing clean air bills and clean air acts. They were doing it because of, if you remember, we were very ecologically aware. You remember things like Pitch In and Woodsy Owl and all those things were there to remind us. And the Crying Indian. If you remember,
because of the spotted owl.
Yeah, remember the Crying Indian? He was also popular. And it was because we were, certainly, I think, ecologically minded. I remember back when I was a kid going to a 7-Eleven and getting a Slurpee, or back then it was an Icy. And we get Icies, and Icies were like in these very economical cups, and they'd tell us, pitch in, and if we pitched in or recycled, we'd get a little hippy dippy type of flower bumper sticker, a flower sticker we could put on our bicycles. Right. So we'd get all those cool things just for being ecologically minded. And I remember it was 1976, 77. It was Jimmy Carter And they were telling us that we had to prepare because 30 years afterward, we'd be seeing all kinds of crazy bad weather that would be plummeting the temperatures, and we'd be living in cold temperatures. In fact, I think it was a Time magazine cover in 1977 that actually had a penguin on it saying, this guy could be your neighbor.
Yeah,
I remember that one. Yeah, that was 1977. And, of course, Jimmy Carter made proposals, too, about how we could help the planet because he was another planet-minded president.
A planeteer?
Yeah, George H.W. Bush also was a planeteer. He also did a number of things. But there was also, within his realm of influence, the idea of using these types of things to actually, and they created boogeymen like the ozone layer. Remember that when we were kids?
Yeah.
Talk about how the ozone layer was being depleted.
Don't use hairspray.
Right.
Don't use any of that. Yeah.
They changed the propellants. That was because there were a number of patents that DuPont lost, and they decided to vilify those who used these types of aerosols.
Yeah.
So they changed the aerosol, the way we make aerosols in this country. In fact, what was really odd is I remember when I was in South America, I was very surprised that in South America they were using regular aerosol cans for their deodorants. And I said, don't you guys worry about the ozone layer? Says, no, that's an American thing. That's all a joke. Says the Americans have said the ozone layer is depleting, but it's not depleting. There's no other country on the planet. He says, the storekeeper I was talking to, he says, you notice that America doesn't use the metric system. They don't use the metric system. Everybody else does, but you don't use the metric system. Why is that? It's because America is its own little world. It's its own little place, and they come up with their own little fears and their boogeymen. And he says, and they're not like the rest of the world. He says, but eventually that will all change. But I haven't seen it in my lifetime changing. But what I have seen are inroads to change with regard to climate, with regard to green economy. And, maybe with the green economy, they will force us into going fully metric. Because, we've had both the English system and the metric system, and we've been using it together. But I think eventually they could just pull it out from underneath us, and we'd just be using metrics to measure instead of miles. We're doing kilometers and meters and kilograms and grams. And
I can't wait for that. I spent 2 years in Germany, and trying to get used to the metric system was just weird. But
it's weird. But the thing about the thing about a metric system, and when I lived in South America, we were living under the metric system. What was really odd is that soon you figure out just what it looks like. You know what a pound looks like, about a pound of hamburger. When you get yourself when you get yourself a hamburger there, and you know what a kilogram is, and you know what a gram is, you pretty much can figure it out by sight. So you know what you want. Or a liter or a 2 liter. We no longer say, can you give me a gallon of Pepsi? Give me a 2 liter of Pepsi, or give me a 20 ouncer. But usually it's a liter or 2 liter. So
I thought it was really strange in Germany. That's how they sold gas, was by the liter.
Yeah,
and it was like when I first was there. This was back in '83. I was like, "What's a liter?"
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like. I spend less on my Pepsi than I did that, but
I remember we used to always hate the metric system in school. We say, "How do you kill a liter?" You just would say you drink it down fast and no one notices. But so I don't know if we eventually are going to go fully metric, but I have a feeling that if we decide we do go, along with the other, socialist orders and become part of this ecumenical umbrella or become a world government, I would say that I think that the new generations will be most certainly ready to accept a metric system and also whatever they're fed with regard to resources, the division of resources, the accepting of a microchip in order to, plug into the system that will be a massive computer system. There'll be a cashless society, and there will be people who will be out of work due to innovations, and they will be paid a floor wage, and that's going to happen. It's going to be an emergency socialism that we're going to be experiencing probably within the next, I'd say, 10 years, 20, maybe.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And I'm sorry to see that coming. The other thing, though, that I wanted to mention, that the schools nowadays, a lot of the things that we learned when we were growing up, they don't even teach anymore, like script writing.
No.
I couldn't believe it when I heard that because a friend of mine gave her son a birthday card, and she wrote his card in script.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Mom, what's this say?" And I was like, you're kidding me.
No.
So, yeah, the world's changing, unfortunately, a little too fast.
Well,
anyway, Clyde, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Joe, thank you.
And I love listening to your show.
Take care.
And keep doing what you're doing.
You're the best, man. Thank you, Joe, for calling. You know, it's true. I was watching a TV show the other day, and anymore, you know, when you sign those little slips, when you do your little slips and you sign them, you know, when you do your card, they don't care how you sign it. You can just scribble. Doesn't matter. They're not watching to see if you're giving your signature. They don't care about signature anymore. Anymore, online signing is important. If you just know how to scratch something on a screen, they don't, you know, there's also electronic signing where you can sign by just typing in your name. No need for a signature. They're able to trace it. I mean, we're living in times where you don't need cursive. You don't need script. Things are changing. Things are different. Weather's changing. Times are changing. But we were all hearing about it, when we were kids, and now we're watching the crazy reactions from other generations. And that's the thing, is that when it didn't happen on time, they're now deciding they want to make it happen. That's why I worry about the idea of hypnotizing the eschaton, because it just seems to me that, you know, you nudge God by trying to create the end of the world. I don't think God's going to play ball like that. I think there's going to be a backfire, and I don't know. I just don't trust mankind basically waving and saying, God, come down here, end the world. We need it ended. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are thinking, man, it'd be a relief if it did happen. I don't know. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL. This is Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
All right. Go to Randy in Illinois. Hi, Randy, on Ground Zero.
Good evening, Clyde. Hope all is well.
Everything's fine. Thank you.
Good. I have a question. I'm not the expert to tell the difference between a chemtrail and a contrail. I think I know. Can you give me a little refresher course 101?
Contrails are condensation trails, and they're natural because of the heated air that is dispersed from an aircraft. And so it condenses on the plane, and then it goes off into a trail, and then it dissipates after so many seconds after the plane has laid down its trail. Now, chemtrail, on the other hand, is a lingering contrail. It lingers for some time, spreads over the horizon, and sometimes it involves itself with weather fronts, either blocking them or increasing their intensity. And this has been watched many times. In fact, in the beginning of the program, we played a report from the 1980s, and John Chancellor at NBC News discussing how these trails can affect the weather, and that in the future they could be using, this was in the 1980s, they said in the future they could probably use airplanes to control the weather. And so they already made this, prophetic declaration about trails and how they can be used to control the weather. Now, they said that at the time, contrails wouldn't be able to do it, but chemtrails was something that was actually, it was a terminology that was invented to actually describe chemical trails in the sky left behind with barium and all the metals and all the other chemicals that are used to control the weather, to be used for, grid reflection, and also to dim the planet or to dim the skies. Now, as the terminology has been updated, and the idea is to improve upon what they've already been doing for the past, nearly 20 years, they now want to call, or they now call it, the stratospheric aerosol injections, something that John Brennan had talked about, something that former CIA Director John Brennan of the Council on Foreign Relations, something these Yale scientists are talking about. David Keith, who was one of the first people who proposed having weather control trails being laid down similar to what they do in France, some of what they do in China. And they don't go so far as to say they're doing it here in the United States, but we know they're doing it in the United States when we look out our windows and see the heavy spraying that does have something to do with the climate and the weather control.
We're about 40 miles west of Chicago, and I've noticed in the western horizon lately, especially in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I see a lot of vertical trails that are literally going straight up like if it was a rocket launch. And I know it can't be a commercial plane doing that.
Right.
Because they wouldn't come up vertical. So I'm assuming those would be a chemtrail then.
Well, watch,
like you said.
Well, watch how the trails spread, first of all. Also, chemtrails are well known for leaving behind or at least having an oily sheen on them. So you look in the sky, you can see the oily sheen or kind of a brown residue that seems to remain in the trail. So it's a heavy sprayed area with an oily residue in the trail, meaning there's chemicals and other things in the trail that are polluting the skies.
Right. Keep up the good work, Clyde.
Thank you
for listening to your program.
Oh, thank you, Randy. Thank you so much for listening to the program.
Take care.
And not just the chemicals, but we've said that there have been other things in there, like fungus. That's in there. You look at, they found white blood cells. They found barium. They found other metals, aluminum. These things are found in the trails because they're using them to reflect either light or radio signals. People have said that the HARP project, the array in Alaska, has been used in tandem with chemtrail grids. When they lay grids down, it's because they want to use them for communication grids. We've been known to monitor trails. They do go for miles, and they eventually unite with storm systems to force multiply storm systems. They've been known to spawn tornadoes. They've been known to spawn very, very fierce lightning storms. So, while this is something that has been part of the conspiracy theory lexicon for some time, the idea of a chemtrail, now the scientists are giving it a different nomenclature, saying that it's a stratosphere aerosol injection. We can update it and use that type of wording in order to at least present ourselves and not be misunderstood and not be told that we're crazy conspiracy theorists that look for chemtrails when we know that they are actually strategically placing in the skies these aerosolized sulfur dioxide trails that are there to somehow cool the planet. I don't believe this is something we need to do, but of course, other people may disagree. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on this and what you think should be done, because it's very important, I believe. And why do you think they're now improving upon something that they've already been doing for some time? It does sound like this is a step up for them, going from 30 to 40,000 feet to 60,000 feet to lay a trail that they say could last up to 18 months. Interesting. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
I have a request tonight. Storm the studio. When you hear this, that is the introduction.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." Hear that? Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis. This is Ground Zero. Tonight we opened up a few lines, so if you had a hard time getting in, we got you covered. Just come and call 888-673-3700. 888-673-3700. Give us a ring. We'll talk to you tonight in the last hour of the program. So I made a long list of reasons why this is insane, what they're doing, the plan for the SAIs. They're doing this all because they want to increase, well, what they're doing is they're increasing the poisoning of the atmosphere, all because they believe that they're going to be fighting climate change. You can't fight climate change. Climate change happens. But what they're doing is they have this belief that using a Orwellian word to cover up the fact that they lied about global warming and lied about all of the temperature fluctuations, they got 1 billion gullible world citizens out there convinced that this is somehow amazing. This is a great idea. You know, it's like the idea. I remember one time I had a friend of mine. I had a clogged shower, and he thought it was a great idea to use a Roman candle to unclog the drain in my shower. He could have killed us all with methane gases in the pipes. But what it did do is I think it did break open a pipe because they had to shut off the water. They had to fix something. I mean, I don't know what happened, but it was certainly a bad idea. Now, contemplating all of what I was reading today and what I prepared for the show tonight, I just can't help but surmise that they're going to be unleashing a catastrophic situation to all life in our world. The lunacy is not even questionable, and their actions seem to indicate that they want a mass cull of the population in order to create a post-human world. Now keep that in mind. The idea of a post-human world. With all the stuff we've talked about with AI, all the stuff we've talked about, with regard to designing human beings, the Chinese designing babies, which, by the way, the man, the doctor, or the scientist that created those designer babies, he's missing now. They can't find him. He went missing. I wonder what happened to him. I wonder what happened to him when they found out he was playing God. And I wonder what will happen to these scientists if they do decide to do something that would unwittingly support our own extinction. Creating a post-human world. That's what it feels like. I mean, given the now planned destruction of Earth's atmosphere in the name of climate change, we have to consider that this is what is happening. I know it's an outrageous thing to think about, but no matter how bizarre it gets, nothing surprises me anymore. The idea that they even have this all figured out, they have it in regular science journals, and they're taking this very seriously. That perhaps they're preparing for a post. I mean, look, Elon Musk. Let's use him for an example. He's preparing, as we speak, and we talked about this a couple shows ago. He's preparing for a new life on Mars. 71% chance that he said that he'll survive a trip to Mars, and he'll probably die there. That's what he says he wants to do. And he says it doesn't matter because people have traveled to Mount Everest and they've died on the way. And he basically says it's the same thing. So Elon Musk says he's getting off the planet. He wants off the planet. A lot of elitists say that they wish they could be off planet. Talking about some sort of a breakaway civilization that may exist, or it certainly wants to exist outside the planet. Stephen Hawking warned us before he died that we either have to modify our bodies or leave the planet. So why are the technocrats now so desperate to alter the Earth's atmosphere and make the planet inhospitable to humans? Because they want a post-human world. Think about the interest in frozen civilizations under the ice shelves of Antarctica. Think about the race to gather worldwide DNA and put it all in a database. Why? Think about the interest in the Arctic seed vault to preserve the seeds of life in preparation for a global cataclysm. And I said earlier, I was on the TV show Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura. It was actually a show that addressed this very issue of, we had researchers uncovering underground bunkers in Virginia and in the Ozarks. They're all ready for the elite to survive a global cataclysm. So, I mean, it really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, when you have mad science and how it's embraced and legitimized by the globalists in order to destabilize economies of various governments that don't comply with their green economy and political takeover. I mean, It boggles the mind. And I know there have been many times where I've talked about something or I've spoken of something that I'm sure people go, oh, Clyde Lewis, man, he is nuts. Yeah, I know how nutty this sounds too, but then before, it was nutty to say that they're giving a plan of chemotherapy by poisoning the skies, and now they're going to take it one up and make modified planes that can go 60,000 feet that can drop chemtrails. And the question is, are the people of Earth being dealt a suicide hand in order to avoid the inevitable? I mean, is this how they do it? Is this their little hint of saying, hey, we're going to end the world slowly for you so you don't have to do it yourself? You know, hang on for dear life. We're going to do stuff that's going to screw up with the planet. I mean, I don't know. Post-human world, that's what I wonder. I wonder if that's what they're preparing for, is a post-human world. Let's go to Michael in Texas. Hi, Michael. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde, how you doing?
Doing good, man.
Man, there's, it's kind of like half the population, they believe in religion. The other one believes in whatever they're going to believe in, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And, I believe in God.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But the problem is that you got half and half fighting over something that is real, and one half saying it doesn't matter because I believe in God. Okay, fine. Believe in God, believe in religion, everything else. But what you're doing is you're dismissing the fact that there's something real out there, and you're just make-believing, or not make-believing, but just saying that, God's going to take care of it all. Well, he will in his own way, but it's really kind of bigger than that. When you think about cap and trade, I'm a truck driver in Texas. I drive about 600 miles a day. I see unnatural skies all day long. I look up in the skies and see streaks, streams that should not be there. They don't look like clouds. There's no reason for them to look like X's and H's and everything else in the sky,
Right.
So you look up in the sky and you go, what in the world is going on? And then you think about cap and trade, what these guys are trying to pull on us with taxes and everything. I think it's a bigger picture. I think what it is that it's more than taxes. It's a direct monopoly. It's like, okay, you want sunlight for your territory today? Okay, it's going to be this much. If not, then it's going to be dark skies. Now, I understand that's a little crazy to think about it, but think about it. Cap and trade. Mm-hmm. You're paying for your atmosphere. You're paying for sunlight. If sunlight comes down to cap and trade, and because that's what we're talking about, right?
Right.
So it comes down to money again. Just like these people in power always think about money, power, everything else. That's what they want. But they want more than just they want to be able to control the plant foods. They want to be able to control whether or not you even have sun that day. I mean, it's going to come down to that. I mean, that's what we're looking at a 2030 agenda.
Well,
it's crazy.
You're right. And the thing is, they've had all this time to perfect what it is they're doing. Because, if you go back to the 1940s and you look at what the United States, the Soviet Union during the Cold War did, what they did during the Vietnam situation, they geoengineered the area. They actually created floods in certain areas. They were able to do that then.
They was making rain clouds.
Right.
In Vietnam. That's what they was doing in the 1960s. They knew how to do it by 1959. 1960s, 1963, they perfected it and created, what do they call it? Tsunamis? I can't remember, but they was
tsunamis.
Yeah,
tsunami bombs. I did a show about the tsunami bombs. In fact, if you want to dig even deeper, go back to 1976. And this is like, as I said, back in the time of the Carter era, the era, the Ford Carter, Reagan era. I'm not too keen on the time. I think 76, 77 maybe. The UN, actually, they had a UN convention on the prohibition of military use of environmental modification techniques. In other words, they had to, 85 countries had to sign on and say, we're not going to use the weather, nor are we going to weaponize the earth for war. So you can't weaponize geoengineering. You just can't.
Yeah, well, I would have to say the UN nations and everything else is conflicting themselves then. Of
course they are.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. They're going back on what they said they weren't going to do. I mean, they're using
Absolutely.
They're using geoengineering techniques, and believe it or not, geoengineering should be, and I think we should demand that geoengineering, if used carelessly, is a weapon of mass destruction.
Absolutely, because it comes down. Look, people need sun to be able to survive. It's just like water. It's just like breathing. You got to have water. You got to have atmosphere. You got to have air. You got to have H2O. You got to have all that stuff just to survive as a human being. If you don't have that, these people that are in charge know this. They know how to manipulate you, control you in every which way. Monopoly. Anyway, I mean, all the way down to the vaccines. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but it doesn't really matter. What it comes down to, you're talking about terraforming, and there's already evidence in the documentation of actual scientists, all the way from MIT down to Harvard, that has been talking about terraforming this planet Earth for years now.
Yeah.
It's not science fiction. People need to get over it. They need to understand that this is actually happening. Look up in the skies, man.
Well, and here's another thing, too. Even if we are unable, which is highly doubtful now because of what they're claiming they have now with the SAIs, if we were to try and document the lower level chemtrailing, if you will, if we were unable to do that, one of the things that I can say, and I think that maybe you could agree with me, maybe not, but if geoengineering is a weapon of war, if it is a weapon of mass destruction, if used for bad deeds, then the idea of pushing climate change doom-mongering is a psychological warfare tool. It is also a weapon of mass destruction, because what it does is it instills in the minds of the people a doomsday failure option, where they're actually pushing the idea that we're on the brink of mass suicide or mass extinction. And so the powers that be don't care about what they are doing when they push the issues of climate change. It's a psychological warfare ploy, a psyop, and I think it needs to be stopped.
Yes, and I think that comes back to the point to where the psyop, unfortunately, might come back down to religion, because you always hear about people talking about the last hour or the end of times and everything else, and it comes back down to psychological psyops.
Yeah, well, I mean, they can capitalize that. What? They're capitalizing on the eschaton now by saying, look, the weather changes, the Bible says so, and guess what? You're going to have to do what we say. You're going to have to follow what it says in Romans. You know, Romans says that you do not go against the law no matter what it is. Well, here's a law that we're going to tell you that you're going to be taxed through your nose. And look what it did to France. Look what's going on in France right now. It's because Macron thought, hey, I'm the environmental guy. Well, it's going to cost you. Well, no, it's going to cost you, man. We're going to blow up France. We don't want you to lead us. His popularity rating right now is 18%. Macron. Yeah,
and there's riots going on in the street, fires, bombs.
Yep.
Well, fire bombs. You know, it's crazy over there.
And it's all because he said we want a green economy. Now, imagine what's going to happen in the United States when these lily whites who sit there and continue to push climate change find out that in order to have the whole climate change thing suppressed, you got to pay through your nose. It's blackmail. It is emotional, psychological blackmail is what it is.
Yeah. It's more than blackmail. It's threatening.
Yep.
It's threatening us with our very own survival. What you're doing is you're telling us cap and trade is the very essence of our survival, according to what the elites think. Right. And I'm tired of that, man.
Right. I agree. I agree with you. We're out of time, but I appreciate you calling. Great call.
Man, hey, listen, you're awesome. I listen to you all the time, brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do, too. Take care.
All right. Bye.
The worldwide weather modification assault has been used to confuse and divide populations in regard to the true state of what is going on with the climate and the true extent of the threat that we collectively face. The ongoing effort by climate engineers to mask the full degree of climate damage from this world population has been aggressive and consistent, and now it's showing, now they're saying that they are going to modify the program that they've already been using to lay trails down to make people sick and to change the climate and weather movements. And I just think that people need to wake up to this. They really do. I I know it's going to trample all over the little biases you've been able to work up the past years as these people in power have told you that climate change is something that can be changed. No, something the Earth does because it's resilient and it's a complex form. Pay attention. They're trying to screw with the environment, and they'll kill people in the process. But that's part of the plan. 888-673-3700. Back with more Ground Zero. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
You know what? One of the things that people say to me, Clyde, you got to admit that there are countless forms of anthropogenic damage to the planet. Yeah, I know. There are. But see, here's the deal. Climate engineering is the single most destructive of all, short of a nuclear cataclysm. And that's the way I see it, because it's lasting, okay? And the countless negative consequences of engineering manifest themselves, and we see the manifestation with the force multiplied storms, the droughts, the flooding, the fires. Yeah, the fires have burned hotter and drier because of the fact that once you create a weather system in one place, somebody else has to lose. So a regular weather system to bring rain to California has been moved over to drop rain in the Midwest. Or it's been moved into an area of the Gulf so it can create a hurricane. And what's the purpose? Well, the purpose is simple. Disaster capitalism, of course. But no one would think that they'd want to destroy something in order to get a contract to rebuild it. Now, would they? No. Nobody learned anything from the previous Gulf Wars, did they? No. That's exactly what they did with the Gulf Wars. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Excuse me, mister, can't you see the children die? You say that you can't help them, mister, you're not even trying. Excuse me, mister, just take a look around. Ah, mister, just look up and you will see me coming down.
Geoengineering that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. Is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly.
Disney movies? Come on, you're crazy.
The technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations.
tonight. Yeah, they gave it an official name, the trailing that's been going on. So this year we can put to bed the word chemtrail and replace it with stratospheric aerosol injections, sulfates. I'll put sulfates in the stratosphere just so they can dim the planet. It's nuts. And it could backfire. And that's the thing. We have volcanoes to do that, but they want to mimic volcanoes. They want to do all kinds of crazy stuff to the planet. I say, back off. Let the planet do what it does. Please. Let's go to Mac in Oregon. Hi, Mac. You're on Ground Zero.
Evening, Clyde.
Hey, what's up?
Man, last few nights you just knocked it out of the park with all your shows. It's unbelievable how good you are. I just love listening to you. You're always spot on.
Thank you.
This thing, we've talked many times about chemtrails and about HAARP, and I've always tried to put the two together for you and tell you about my experiences with those. But this whole thing it's like they can't do enough to try to get us all together to destroy ourselves. I mean, they'll convince us that they're basically trying to convince us that we need to get rid of ourselves. Oh
yeah.
I mean, if it isn't the big G man telling people not to worry about overpopulation because he's got things in the line, he's got geoengineered mosquitoes, and oh my God, we got vaccines. We're always working on a depopulation time schedule, and the Agenda 2030. I mean, they came out with Agenda 2030, and you know what the outcome of Agenda 2030 is? It's the elimination of poverty. Mm-hmm. But the only way you eliminate poverty is to get rid of the people that live in that category.
Right, exactly.
Now, and you've said it all night long, you start messing with this planetary-wide way of cooling the planet. Well, the planet's already cooling, but what happens when you cool the planet? You lose food production. Mm-hmm. With food production down, then you have the absolute right to be able to, to put caps on people. It's all comes back to feudalism. Granted, the rich guys, they want to get off planet, so by the time that everybody's dead, they can come back in a few years after that and clean up the mess and have their utopia. That's all they're looking for. That's all they're looking for, to get rid of as many people as they can. They say 95% of the population. Well, I think, like you said at the beginning of the show, they're thinking 15 years. Well, Agenda 2030 is 12 years. They're talking 15 years with this program. In any case, they're telling you the timeline. They want to get rid of 90% of the population within the next 12 to 15 years.
Right.
It's pretty obvious.
Well, we're seeing the beginnings of it now. That's the scary part, is that because, if you look at the date, they're very serious about 2030. I know when they did Agenda 21 and when they did they did the 2020 summit, and then they did that in Brazil, or I think it was like 2021 or 20. I think that the idea of 2020 was the beginning of it all, and the ending would be culminating in 2030. And then I think that after 2030, they have another 10 years of testing this and making it work. And then by 2040, 2049, we celebrate Chinese communism, 100 years of communism, which,
well, we've already made the 100-year start. The 100-year start was, World War I and 1913. That's when it all really got with it. We've talked about that.
Right.
But, so we're going to be at 150, 160 years by the time we're all living. The ones that are allowed to, they'll be living in dome cities where all they do is do production for the wealthy people that live out in the pristine wilderness of the rest of the world. It's just going to be slaves here and them over there. It's serfdom. It's feudalism. It's the Chinese model on a different scale.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I see it, and you try to explain it to people. And in fact, the other day I was reading something that's really weird. I think Google had an outage. What was it? A couple days ago, they had an outage, and nobody knew that every bit of their information were going through the Chinese servers of Google. And
that was like a week ago.
Yeah, a week ago. Everything was being handled by the Chinese. And Google didn't say anything. It's like they go down in the United States and China steps up to the plate and says, "Oh, okay, well, all that information can go through our servers. We're fine with that."
And then you take this geoengineering that they're planning with the high altitude aerial spray, and then add 5G to it. I mean, and nobody even talks about Fukushima anymore. It's still dumping.
Well, and you know why? Because there's nothing we can do about it. It was a doomsday plot from the very beginning, and they say that the radiation is being diluted, but that doesn't talk about the plankton that's being eaten by fish, and then the fish are eaten by other fish, and those fish actually are carrying some of the radiation of the poisoning from Fukushima. I'm right. I mean, I eat seafood very rarely, but when I do, I'm very paranoid. I always worry about whether or not it's going to put radiation in my system and kill me.
Yeah, but how many thousands of years is that thing going to leak radiation into the ocean?
There's no way to stop it. It's going to continue.
You're right.
It's going to be going on long after you and I are dead, my friend. It's going to be it's going to continue.
I know.
Yeah.
I ain't going to be able to make it to the Krampus party, but I want you to know that me and Linda wish you and your family a really good time. And if I don't get to talk to you before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas.
Well, thank you, man.
I don't know to say that on the phone.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Yeah, you can go ahead and say that on the phone. I love it. Thank you, back. You have a Merry Christmas. You take care. All right, bye-bye. Let's go to Roger in Indiana. Hi, Roger. You're on Ground Zero.
Love your show, Clyde.
Thanks.
I just wanted to mention that I think the sun should be considered in the equation. If it goes through a solar minimum, we're liable to go into another ice age because of the sun.
Flash freeze, man. That's the thing, is if they pull this off when we're going through solar minimum, or if they're actually improving upon something that's already screwed up the ecosystem and the jet stream, they're certainly going to put us in a situation where we could have a flash freeze like what the mammoths had. They were in the middle of eating some delicious green plants, and then it just stopped. Everything stopped in their tracks, and they died. And no one knows how that happened. Something happened.
And we're going to be watching our smartphones.
Yeah, we'll be watching our smartphones. We'll be frozen in that position. It'll be like Pompeii with smartphones is what it'll be. That sucked. That would really suck, dude. That would suck. Man, what a way to go. What were you doing? I was just staring at my smartphone, man, and all of a sudden I just froze solid. I don't know what the hell's going on, man. Oh, you can hear it. You're so mean. You're so diabolical. You're so evil. I don't know. Roger, you're the man. Thanks for calling the show. Take care, buddy. Have a good day. I was just looking at my cell phone. Huh? All of a sudden it just got cold, dude. I don't know what happened. Got frozen solids thrown in my hand. Anyway, guess I won't be playing Fortnite. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Back with more Ground Zero. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
Back to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Go to Juliet in California. Hi, Juliet. You're on Ground Zero.
Okay, thanks.
You're on the air.
Hi, Clyde.
Hi.
Hi. I remember one of your shows, and I don't know if it was you or one of your guests, but they said there's 5 ways they're going to destroy the Earth. And one was the air, which we already have our chemtrails making everybody sick.
Yes.
They were going to do something to the oceans, and we have animals dying all the time, washing up on shore. And then with the land, we've had all these forest fires on the whole west coast of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember the 5 things, but I remember there was something said that how they were going to go about doing this. So I don't know if it's going to happen in 10 or 12 years. I think maybe it's already happening now.
Well, you can see that it's building upon a plan, and it seems to be, I think, linked together. And you have to see the parts and the patterns and the puzzle pieces to understand that this has been a plan that's been going on for some time now. And they're finally getting the money, and they're finally getting the credibility. And while we're all tied up in the political banter between investigations about Russia and whatever, and whether or not you hate Trump or love Trump, or whether or not you're for this or you're for that, the very things that are going to destroy us are being created now. The monsters are being created now in the labs, And one day we'll wake up and they'll be on the news. It's like when these kids were, designed in China. We had talked about the designer babies. We talked about designer athletes and super soldiers years before it became news that this was going on. And finally, when it became news, now the doctor's gone. We were talking about trails back in the 1990s, 1998, and nobody really knew what they were for. They just knew they were there, and they didn't know what it was about. More and more people came forward and studied them and talked about it. Military came forward and talked about it, releasing information about who was responsible, how the programs were being used all the way back to the 1940s, Operation Popeye. And now here we are with this plan to do the SAIs, and how SAI now will be the phrase because it finally gives credibility to what's been going on the whole time. So those who've been talking about the chemtrails, they can be a little vindicated by it. But the only thing is, it's more dangerous now that they're planning on putting it in an upper, even above where the chemtrails are laid. It's going to be another level that will certainly affect the weather on a grander scale.
For 18 months, that's terrifying.
18 months, and they're going to do it again. Once that dissipates, they're going to bring up the level of planes. They're going to have a whole army of planes to be able to do that. It's just crazy. I mean, when you read about what they're planning, and when you read, I mean, this is like made it now all over the mainstream in some mainstream websites. I was just looking at CBS News, and they've been talking about it. So, I mean, this isn't something that, it hasn't made the network 24-hour news cycle, but it's certainly floating out there to be picked at any time, and I think it will be.
Yeah. I think maybe a suggestion for everybody that knows what chemtrails are and what is it, ASI now?
Say SAI. It's stratus. What is it again? It's stratosphere. No, wait a minute. I just drew a blank on what it is. Stratospheric aerosol inoculations or injections. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe if we grow foods in the house so we don't get like the clouds, whatever's floating up there, all those chemicals into our foods.
Bring in the tomatoes. That's all you got to do. Juliette, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Do I bring in my tomatoes tonight? I think I should bring in my tomatoes tonight. Let's go to Matt in Oregon. Hi, Matt. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde.
Hey, what's up?
Thanks for taking my call. I just had a thought. What if this was used as a weapon modifier? Much like the same of, how a granary or a flour mill has air particulates in there and there's a spark and that whole building becomes a bomb. What if this was kind of the same thing?
Well, yeah, it's the whole idea of turning the planet into a bomb. It's weaponizing the planet. So you're onto something there because it's like, what more? What more can happen? What more can they do? And how are they trying to, screw with the jet, the electrojet? How are they screwing with the environment, and what are they doing? Well, they're saying it's going to help us, but as I said before, we've heard of anthropogenic damage has been done to the planet in other cases, not necessarily with climate, but now here we have another opportunity to damage the ecosystem, collapse the economy, create soils that won't grow crops. I mean, it's definitely a suicide pact. And if anybody that supports this, I don't know why they would, because it's not going to save anybody. It's not going to help anybody. It's just going to fill the pockets of those who want to destroy the planet.
Exactly. Well, thank you for taking my call.
Well, thank you for calling. Yeah, it's, I don't know what else to say about this. I know we're getting close to the end of the show, but I would just say that, what I'm talking about, you can look up on your own. You can find on your own. And you can see that there has been how it's built up. And how for the longest time is, once again, the word here is deny. And it's just not those who deny climate change. I don't think people understand how climate change has been turned into this Orwellian type of newspeak word that, sure, you've learned in physics and you've learned in school about science and climate and how climate does change. But the saying now that if you do this to the stratosphere, it will eliminate climate change. No, it will not eliminate or change climate. It just doesn't. Climate changes on its own. And climate is something that's analyzed for years. And here we've had 30 or more years to be told and warned about an ice age, then have it be interrupted by a warming age, interrupted by, well, we're not sure about warming. We're talking about disruption. So there it goes from cooling to warming to disruption, which it does disrupt because it is disrupting our way of life. And then it's climate change. Just generalize it all. Well, you need to be more defined than that. Because the madmen are more defined in what they're doing. And we know exactly what they want to do. They want to weaponize the planet. They want to weaponize the planet. So we know what that is. We know it's something we don't want. And we need to take into consideration that planet Earth is a complex system. It's resilient. And we should have hope. But we throw it all away when we throw it in the hands of the technocrats who want to continue to scare us into thinking that if we just pay our money, pay our dues, pay our taxes, pay our carbon taxes, we'll all live happily ever after in some cooked up utopian new world order. And it just doesn't seem to sell. It may sell for you, but it won't sell for people who keep their minds where they can't get at them, and that's at ground zero. Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.